You're listening to eHoneymoon, Book 4 in the clickandwed.com romances by Bonnie Paulson. Two best friends matched for marriage. One honeymoon to make it work. Neither of them is certain they're making the right choice. When an online spouse matching website, clickandwed.com, matches Kayla with a man she believes she's never met, she doesn't know if she wants to commit to 6 months with someone she's not sure she's even attracted to. With encouragement from her best friend, she opts for the shorter time frame of only 2 weeks and hopes there aren't certain expectations that are attached to honeymoons. Fireworks ignite as the truth comes out that the groom is her best friend, and he knew all along. The 2 weeks tick down. In this funny, friends to lovers sweet romance, our matched bride and groom are thrust into the romance zone on their honeymoon. With only 2 weeks to either fall in love, impossible, or lose not only their marriage but their friendship, Kayla and Dylan have to decide just how far they're willing to go to find if their hearts really belong with each other. Say I do to this irreverently funny romance with poignant moments that will make you flip each page. Chapter 1. Kayla. Best friend shouldn't be as good looking as Dylan Drake. In fact, if I had my way, Dylan would be back to the pudgy guy he was in high school. Only then would I be able to keep him all to myself and never worry I would have to share him with other women who only wanted to take advantage of him. I pushed through the doors of our favorite restaurant on Sherman Avenue, the main street of the small town of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. We grew up cruising through downtown in our cars and out toward the beach of the huge lake. Just a stone's throw from the water, the Iron Horse Bar and Grill was set up like a pub, and game room on one side and a restaurant on the other. Dylan and I could never figure out which side we wanted to be on, and usually, whoever got there first would choose. Judging by his text, he'd arrived first. While he'd been at the office all day, I'd been checking on merchandise at one of our suppliers, or we would have driven together. Apparently, he preferred the tall tables on the tavern side that night. I got it. Heading to our 10-year high school reunion was more stressful than either of us wanted to admit. We both had a lot of baggage, and 10 years wasn't enough time to consolidate it all. Lots of alcohol on board wouldn't hurt as we set off down the yellow brick road. His dark wavy hair and strong shoulders covered in a snug black t-shirt stood out from the other patrons. I could easily see him from the door. He pulled the look off without being a jerk. I'd never met a man who worked out as much as he did and was the opposite of vain. Gripping my small purse, I slid into the seat across from him. Kicking his shin softly with my toe, I arched my brow. How many phone numbers do you have so far? We haven't even started the night, and I can really see them checking you out. I winked and opened the menu. I already knew what I would get. In fact, Dylan knew me so well, I wouldn't be surprised if a Mai Tai and a plate of onion rings and mozzarella sticks showed up as I sat down. You're just jealous. I told you, I could be a one phone number guy. All you have to do is say the word. Dylan's deliciously decadent lips curved in a knowing smile as he threw down the challenge that was so common between us. I swear he teased me just because he knew he could. I folded up the menu and tapped its surface when I laid it down. I couldn't be with a guy who doesn't order before I get here. I had fallen for his games way too many times, believing it would always only be me. He just didn't know it. We started out as close friends in junior high and graduated as best friends. We were inseparable. A lot of the guys I dated couldn't handle me being best friends with a guy, especially one who looked the way Dylan did. In high school, though, he was an extra 100 to 150 pounds heavier. Back then, he wasn't as much competition as he was now. The older we got, the more we depended on each other. And dang it, the older we got, the more good-looking he got. Some things weren't fair. Before it became impossible for us to distinguish between what was my life and what was his, we had to do something. I had an idea I wanted to implement that night. but only if he was up for it. He'd been talking about a marriage app for a while, and I was finally interested in checking it out. I leaned across the table and smiled, teasing him. It's okay. You're getting old. I don't expect you to order me a drink or my appetizers every time we come here. I winked and scratched my nails across the green Formica top. I flipped my thick black hair over my shoulder. I'd left it down because Dylan convinced me down was the best style for the type of night we were up for. I wasn't so sure since it was already irritating me. He folded his arms and sat back, his forearms rippling as he considered me. Tilting his head toward the newly arrived waitress, he drawled, I'll take your apology whenever you're ready to give it. Of course, a Saturday would put them a little behind. The items were late, and not because of Dylan. Heat flushed my cheeks, and I nodded my thanks to the woman as she sat my overflowing plate down, alongside a Mai Tai on a napkin. I waited until she dropped off his burger and left. I didn't need any witnesses to my groveling. You're right, I'm sorry, I was just teasing, but I'm tense about this reunion. I still can't believe you're going on vacation in a week and a half. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with myself. Big Dog won't even need me. I won't be needed. I ended on a half wail that I stopped with a side smirk. Don't you feel bad for me? I wasn't joking, though. I really did feel like I was being abandoned. At least on some level I couldn't reach. I glanced around the restaurant, the bright colors suddenly more somber at the thought of my impending loneliness and boredom. Come with me. It'll be fun. Dylan lifted his amber beer, peering at me over the rim of his glass. We have to close Big Dog anyway. There's nothing you can do while it's under construction. Maybe you should come with me. We can do some market research. He offered a compelling argument, but I couldn't go on vacation with him. That's where I drew the line. I'd never been able to go when he asked me in the past. That was something for girlfriends or wives or parents. I was just the best friend. I knew my boundaries and where I belonged. Except, I always wanted to go with him. The temptation was there, and I didn't like that sometimes I was more inclined than others. Right then, with the reunion minutes away, I was more susceptible to his suggestions than usual. We'd be there with everyone happily married or dating someone. I'd be the single girl, and Dylan would be collecting numbers left and right. Women were shamed for not being married, and men were celebrated for being unattached. Scrunching my nose, I wiggled my fingers at him. It's okay. Maybe I'll go visit Mom or take in some reading. There's a bunch of books I want to get caught up on. I dipped a mozzarella stick in the marinara sauce and took a big bite as I looked around the bar at people I didn't care about. I didn't want him to push me too much, but a small part of me wanted him to push a lot. How far would he have to push for me to give in? You can read where I'm going. He was cut off by the sudden arrival of a long-legged redhead in tight jeans and a crop top I swear went out of fashion in the 1990s. I'm Simone. She stood at Dylan's side and put her hands on her insanely slim hips, thrusting her chest forward. She winked. Want to share a derailleur stud? Stud? Maybe she'd already had one. The derailleur was the most popular drink in North Idaho. The bucket had more alcohol than should be considered legal, and it was served with 5 cups of ice. 4 or 5 people could easily drink out of the same bucket and walk away, buzzed. When someone wanted to split a drink like that, they offered more than just a one-drink time. I tried focusing on my onion rings, but I couldn't help but wonder what he would say. She was gorgeous and didn't look like she was used to hearing no. He grinned, letting his gaze rake her figure and commenting in a slow drawl. Not right now, honey. Maybe later. He winked and dismissed her by turning away to face me. Her jaw dropped and she stared at him a moment longer before turning in a huff and stomping away. In heels that high, stomping was an amazing feat. A guy like Dylan had propositions coming out his ears. I pushed the jealousy that was always present to the side. I'd made my decision in high school and then again in college, and then again every year and almost every day since we met. Dylan and I owned an amusement park together. We worked out together. We even lived on the same street. We had grown up as next-door neighbors. We were habits that were hard to break. We knew everything there was to know about each other, and then some. He was the second constant man in my life. My grandpa had died the year before, taking my only other steady man in my life. My father left when I was younger. Dylan filled that hole in my heart, and I refused to lose him because I couldn't handle commitment. Every man I had dated since then had just been like artificial sweetener to sugar. They never stuck around, just like my dad, proving I was the common denominator. I wasn't worth staying for. If Dylan and I got into a relationship where love was involved, how long would it take for him to leave too? If having a romance with me highlighted my negative aspects, I would do everything I could to not have that happen with Dylan. Besides, romance was overrated. We had more than romance. Okay, we didn't have more than romance, and sometimes a woman needed that. But I wouldn't trade what he and I had for a little bit of lust and candles. Eventually, they always left. I had plenty of experience in that department. I didn't want to scare Dylan off, too. Chapter 2. Dylan. Kayla and I had grown up in a small town, and we hadn't left after college. The high school reunion just wouldn't feel right if we didn't go from the high school meet and greet to a cruise on the Coeur d'Alene Lake. If I remembered correctly, 10 years was a long time. We had done our senior party on a similar cruise. I snorted as I parked in the high school parking lot. How original that we were doing our reunion there, too. Maybe we would get to go somewhere else for the 20th reunion. Swaying trees resplendent with new growth lined the parking lot, providing a divider between the main roads and the school land. There had been a lot of renovations made since we had graduated, but the building still felt small when it had seemed huge growing up. Kayla and I climbed out of my Ford pickup. I rushed around to close the door for Kayla. She never waited for me to open the door for her. I scanned her form, impressed with her figure and how she held herself. She had opted to go with more of a casual look, with her one-piece dress, which ended with the skirt hem just below her knee. The soft linen material fit her form with capped sleeves, and a neckline that ran across the top of her collarbones. Her modesty was more appealing than some of the other flashier outfits we saw walking in. Pushing a stray dark brown curl off her shoulder, I murmured, "You look amazing. Who are you trying to impress?" I constantly teased her, flirting as an attempt to wear her defenses down. Over 16 years, I hadn't gotten far, but somehow I would get through. I had to. How long had I been trying to get her to fall for me? Since junior high, when she had thrown my ball back to me over the fence between our backyards. In junior high and high school, when I had nothing but the real me to offer, that's all I tried to give her. I was the fat kid. I was the kid people threw things at. The kid they knocked over when I was dressed in the Viking mascot uniform. The kid they locked in the bathrooms and generally bullied the heck out of. As a cheerleader, Kayla got all the attention she ever wanted. All I ever wanted was her attention. But more than a friend's attention, the kind of attention that could last a lifetime. She'd always refused to take us any further, saying we were more important than romance to her. I knew her backstory, but that didn't make it easy to understand why she couldn't see how perfect we were for each other. Flattery only got you so far when your heart ached with longing. She pulled her lower lip between her white teeth and looked around as we headed towards the front of the building. Craig Croft. My startled laugh took even me by surprise. Seriously? Still? That was a long time ago, and he stopped liking you after the first non-date. The fact that she still thought of Craig as a possibility definitely acted as a blow to my ego. The mythical romance behind Craig was his money and his dad's job, and the fact that he drove around a red Camaro that was definitely from the 90s. I wondered if he still had the car. Back in school, he was the guy all the girls wanted to date, and all the guys wanted to be. One afternoon, I'd been busy with a test. Craig took Kayla up to his place and brought her home. That was it. Kayla never spoke of it, but I doubted he tried kissing her. If that was true, it was contrary to everything Craig Croft stood for. Wrapping my arm around her, I tugged her to the side. "So, if Craig is here, are you going to go for it? You want to make a bet on nailing him?" I leaned down and whispered into her ear as we fell into the queue, filing into the gym. I didn't want her to nail anybody. Talking about it made me sick. I didn't want her to try anything with Craig. Or anyone, for that matter. I wanted her to turn around in my arms and say she just realized I was the one, that I was always the one, and no amount of attention from Craig Croft would ever replace it. Her next words pulled me from my fantasy. I don't know. Is it dumb that I still wish things had turned out differently? I'm lost in the past. It's stupid, you know? Kayla tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and lifted her bright blue eyes my way. I would never grow sick of her blue gaze. There was something intoxicating in the way she smelled, the way she looked, the way she talked, and the way she carried herself. In all our time together, I hadn't gotten bored with her. If anything, I was more interested. All the time we've been together but apart. My parents had made me watch a 1985 movie called Lady Hawk, and it was like that, minus the hawk and the wolf. Shaking my head, I kept my voice low, intimate. I don't think it's dumb at all. I'm still hoping, and it's been close to forever. I put my hand on the small of her back and ushered her in front of me to the doors, where everyone was funneling inside. She didn't say anything when I dropped my subtle hints, like maybe she'd grown immune to them. At what point would I stop being subtle and stop treating things like they were a joke and actually go for it? My bravery would have to be soon. There was only so much pain I could take before my life passed me by. Before I knew it, I would wake up one day and Kayla would be married with children. I would still long for her, hoping my teasing and ever-presence would be enough to get her attention. We signed our names to blue and white name tags and stuck them on our chests. Kayla fell into step beside me as we headed towards the gym, gripping my elbow. Who is she? Because secretly, I hate her guts. She winked at me and leaned in to nudge me with her shoulder. If she only knew what her words would mean, if they were even a quarter serious. I soaked in the meaning of her words in their literal sense. I used every little tidbit to keep me hanging on, hoping that she would secretly mean what she said. Hadn't there been a philosopher who'd claimed there was a nugget of truth in everything we say? Even things we jest about? I hoped that philosopher was right. I didn't answer her question on who I still dreamt about. At that moment, we walked through the doors into a gaudily decorated gym as if we were going to a high school dance. Paper crap hung from varying spots on the walls and ceiling. A Viking head had been taped to the basketball hoops, and the old mascot suit had been posed on the gym stage. How many times had I been locked in that suit, jumping up and down and watching Kayla as she cheered? More than I wanted to remember. Should we grab seats or hang around the punch table? Kayla glanced up at me through her thick lashes. What if I told her right then and there, let's just get married. Let's run away together. What would she do? She'd probably run screaming from the room. Two women approached us, both of them heavily made up, and their hair dyed so many colors. I bet they didn't remember what the natural colors were. Their name tags read Tanya and Tara. A memory of flashy red fingernails flipping me off as I walked by to class crossed my mind. My eyes widened as I caught a glimpse of their matching gold tea necklaces. Ah, right. The terrible teas! They squealed and kind of did a fluttery thing with their arms, running in place with small steps the closer they got to Kayla. They'd been on the cheerleading squad with her, and Kayla had more or left the squad at the end of senior year. She'd had enough of their crap and had never stayed in the clique. You wouldn't know it the way they almost hyperventilated at seeing her. Tanya put her fingers right on her chest, above the overly tanned cleavage she was trying to make sure I saw. She glanced between the two of us and spoke to Kayla, her narrowed eyes watching me. Did you finally get married? Who is this hunky man? He is gorgeous. She lifted her eyebrow and licked her lips at me. I wasn't sure why, but my stomach roiled in disgust. Even my sarcasm was faint with horror. I remember you. Weren't you the exchange student from Germany who came senior year? Tara's brains had only gotten better with age. I curved my lips and glanced toward Kayla. Amusement wasn't on her face. No. She had tolerance in the curve of her cheeks and the shadows under her eyes. She forced a laugh that was markedly devoid of humor. Kayla often talked about how unjust the kids in school had been to me. She pointed at my chest and lifted her delightful chin. No, this is Dylan. You guys remember Dylan Drake? Kayla held her shoulders stiff as she watched them, like she waited for them to start making fun of me. He was our mascot for 3 years. I can't believe you guys don't remember him. Tanya wrinkled her nose, flipping her hair to the side. No, our mascot was Dylan Dump, not this guy. They're not even similar. Tara looked closer, narrowing her eyes. Dylan, is that really you? Wow. What happened? Have you starved the last 10 years? They cackled as they air hugged Kayla and walked on, whispering as they glanced back at us. Don't take them the wrong way. You look amazing. I don't know what their problem is. Kayla put her hand comfortingly on my back. While I wanted to milk her attention for all it was worth, I also didn't want to come across as a sensitive baby. I'm fine. I never put much stock in what the terrible T's say to me. Her worry in how I might be affected by their words cemented my affections for her. Not that they needed a stronger foundation. We made our way to a collection of round tables that had been set up on the far side of the gym. Taking our seats, we settled in, and I draped my arm across the back of Kayla's chair. We did everything together, as if we were together. We were pretty much married. The only things we were missing were I love yous, even though we said those, and the physical intimacy. I would say we were missing out on the living together, but Kayla stayed the night at my house, and once in a while I stayed at hers. We were pretty much a married couple, minus the benefits. Some people I recognized by face but not name sat with us, talking with Kayla and drawing her out of her shy shell. She did well with just passing conversation, but when someone tried getting to know her, she shut down. Once she'd told me she was an introvert, trapped in an extrovert's shell. Watching her laugh, I couldn't help putting my thumb out on the seat to catch a lingering touch of her hair as it grazed my skin. She would smell like hibiscus and honey. I didn't dare lean over to catch a whiff. Pretty soon we would be shuffled to the cruise and couldn't say I was excited for the night to end. Kayla and I rarely had a chance to just hang out. The flood of emotions and memories from high school were wreaking havoc with my deepening feelings for her. I wanted to linger with her a little longer without the stress of business or other pressures of life dragging us down. Did you guys get married or something? One of the girls from Kayla's group leaned over and pointed between Kayla and me. I came back to the conversation and blinked slowly, waiting to hear Kayla's answer. Number Dylan and I are just really good friends. Kayla deflected the attention and any more conversation on her and I being married and continued. I've been thinking about trying out this new website. It's called clickandwed.com. Has anybody heard of it? I glanced at Kayla and tried not to be too interested. I'd been pushing clickandwed.com on her for the past 5 months. I could tell my expiration date on patience was wearing thin. I wouldn't be able to stay with her as just a friend forever. I needed more from her, and I needed her to need me for more than just a buddy. I've heard of that. I was looking into it, but it seems pretty expensive. Plus, I met a guy last week, so I'm hoping it works out well. One of the women who had introduced herself to me as Kimberly had come by herself. Apparently, a week-long relationship was not long enough of a commitment to bring to your high school reunion. Yeah, I just don't have a lot of time to date. When I do make it out, it's usually with Dylan. While the girls don't have any problem hitting on him around me, the guys don't seem to want anything to do with me. Maybe he intimidates them. She smiled and put her fingers on my forearm. I can't imagine why. Kimberly eyeballed me and gave me a deep perusal. I got hit on a lot, which was more than frustrating when the only one I wanted ignored me. She turned back to Kayla. You should consider the website. I think it could be really fun. If you don't have time to date, it's the perfect way to find someone with the same goals. Can you imagine? It matches you perfectly to someone who wants a commitment too. It's not like you're going into a relationship and you're not sure if the other person wants the same thing. It's very clear. You're both there for a marriage. I think it would be ideal. I was starting to like Kimberly a lot more, especially when Kayla tilted her head and leaned back in her seat. Yeah, I think you're right. It might be a good thing for me to do. She chewed on her lip, and I knew that she was seriously thinking about it. How the heck had Kimberly, a woman Kayla hadn't seen in years, been able to get through to her, whereas I hadn't even been able to get her to consider the sight for more than a couple seconds? Women were getting on my nerves. I didn't have any problem admitting that to myself. For the most part, there were only a couple guys in the gym. Of course, the rest who were coming would show up late, which was good. I needed a few drinks on board before I would be able to watch Kayla flirt her way through the crowd. The sad thing was, she wasn't technically a flirt. She was just friendly. She would flirt with rocks, and they would do what she wanted. Kayla had no idea her effect on people, least of all her effect on me. Chapter 3. Kayla. We were on the cruise boat, Spirit of Coeur d'Alene, with its beige paint and navy blue accents. The flat two-story vessel had plenty of room for everyone who had shown up. As it pushed us quietly through the clear, smooth water, I inhaled the fresh water smell. Every few minutes, the pine scent of the surrounding woods would reach me. I hadn't seen Dylan in over an hour. There weren't any clouds in the May sky, and the stars seemed much closer as the cruise boat crept further into the lake. On the top level, I felt like I could have been abandoned. Had Dylan seen the girl he'd been thinking of since high school? He never had told me his real crush's name. I mean, sure, he hit on me constantly, but I think his attention toward me was more of a convenience and proximity thing. Dylan was definitely a ladies' man. Sometimes I was the only lady around. I leaned on the upper deck railing and closed my eyes as the soft May breeze began to cool. We were immersed in an abnormally warm spring, and soon we were due for some cooler weather. But it wouldn't be that week. Heavy tread on the boat carpet and the tinkling of ice in glasses alerted me to his arrival. I spoke while turning. "What took you so long?" My smile was slow and welcoming. I was ready to go home and relax in front of the television. But I stopped, my smile frozen. The man in front of me wasn't Dylan. Craig Croft held out a glass, and his grin was as charming as ever. I hadn't seen him show up. I forced myself to overlook the stained edges of his teeth and the puffiness under his eyes. In 10 years, he had gone from dangerous and alluring to obviously drunk, and from what one of the girls said, he jumped jobs a lot. He had 2 kids with one of the women in our high school class, and he never married her. He said the kids were her problem. As soon as I heard all that and saw him nursing his own flask at the front of the line at the cruise loading dock, I lost all interest. "If I had known you were waiting, Carla, I would have been here sooner." His eyes slurred almost as much as he did with a long, slow blink and an inability to really focus on me. He called me Carla. "Carla." I smiled tightly, dodging his leery gaze. "I'm sorry, Craig. I thought you were someone else." I took a step around him to walk past. He rested the cold bottom of a glass in one hand on my forearm. "No reason to run off. We can still get together, Shayla. I can be the guy you were looking for. I can be whatever guy you want. You look as good as you did back then." His eyes had a glassy sheen, and he looked me up and down. Licking his lips, he showed me enough of his tongue to display flecks of chewing tobacco which looked like little black scratches. "So now I was Shayla, huh?" The ridiculousness of the situation was almost more than I could bear. I smiled, holding my panicked laughter inside. "No, thank you." I pushed my way past him and down the stairs. Our class hadn't been huge when we graduated. Maybe 100 full, and only about 70% actually showed up to the reunion. With only 70 people on board with their spouses, or whoever. It wasn't hard for me to see Dylan as he leaned against the wall on the far side of the cruise ship, looking out at the lake. He had an ankle crossed over the other and one hand tucked into the front pockets of his slacks. The slacks were different for me to see him in. Anything other than work pants or workout shorts was weird. He'd dressed country club casual, and I'd been so proud to have him on my arm all night. But why he was alone was odd, and yet slightly comforting. I sidled up to him and took the drink out of his hands. Taking a sip, I winced at the burn of whiskey in my throat. Gross. I thought maybe you had a Pepsi or something in here. You can barely taste the pop. I leaned into him, relishing his warmth. "Kayla, did you find Craig?" he asked me in the barest whisper, but I could hear the smile in his voice. He found me upstairs, called me Shayla and Carla. Apparently, I was memorable back then. I laughed and handed Dylan his drink back. Can I count that as a win? Can we just pretend that I nailed him? Because I'm not going to kiss that grossness. I shuddered at the thought. Dylan's soft chuckle sent goosebumps up my arms and down the backs of my legs. Let's count it. Did you find yours? Where is she? Did she come? I turned my head to scan the thin crowd. I didn't really recognize anybody as being able to interest someone as complex as Dylan. Although, to be honest, he often went after the not-so-complex women. It's still out for debate. He sipped his glass and wrapped his other arm around me. Are you cold? You have goosebumps. I shook my head and scrunched my nose, turning and staring up at him. Is it pathetic that I'm not married? Do you think it's pathetic? He tilted his head in that way that told me he was really listening to me. I loved when he gave me that look. I don't know. I suck at relationships. I blinked back tears. The whole night was filled with melancholy and sentiment, and I just wasn't fond of any of it. You always have me. I haven't left you. He ran his fingers down the soft part of my arm. I pulled away because I pulled away, but not far enough to put too much distance between us. You know that won't work. I'm not going to ruin what we have. You're my family. If he only knew how absolutely impossible it was, he wouldn't be so quick to mention it. Dylan pulled back, something closed off in his gaze. Are you going to try that online marriage thing? How long had he been pushing me toward that site? Now he seemed almost reluctant for me to go forward with it. Maybe Dylan needed to be married just as much as I did. Maybe it would be good for him to do too. He'd been pushing me to do it. I could make it conditional. A little I'll do it, if you do it gamble. Let's both sign up. If I knew Dylan was doing it with me, it wouldn't be quite so scary. Plus, if he said no way, then I would be justified in saying no. What? I'm not on the marriage market. Dylan squinted at me like maybe he had more to drink than I'd assumed. His next question reconfirmed we still finished each other's sentences. How much have you had to drink? I slapped his arm, grinning at him. I haven't had anything to drink. Get your phone out. We're doing this together. There's an app we can download and do the whole questionnaire, all of it, together. Sit over here. I almost dragged him to the table. We sat side by side. He reluctantly picked out his phone and we downloaded the app. We went through a few buttons and we reached a questionnaire on the screen. Are you at the questionnaire? I lifted my feet and rested them on the chair across from me. Dylan nodded as he stared at his phone and sipped his drink. A waitress passed by and I lifted my hand. Can I get a pina colada, please? She nodded and returned moments later. Laughing, Dylan nodded toward my drink. I thought you weren't having any? I shrugged. The only way I'm going to be able to make it through this is half-wasted. I giggled. It's really strong. I blinked past the lightly green-tinged drink. Okay, let's answer together. The questions seemed pretty fun at first, but the tediousness of the questions grew, and I started to laugh as I realized we were probably answering similarly. Wouldn't that be hilarious if we were matched? It wouldn't happen. It couldn't happen. Dylan and I would not be good together. I would destroy everything about him. He was one of the good guys. I was interested in bad boys. Am I interested in the honeymoon option or the 6-month option? What do you think that means? My finger hovered over the 6-month option button. That was a long-time commitment. What if I hated the guy? What if he chewed with his mouth open? He might have hair plugs or a shaved chest. I moved to put the phone down and sip my drink for more liquid courage. I think you should do the honeymoon option. Big Dog won't make it very long without us. I think 2 weeks would be good. Don't you think we'll know after 2 weeks of being with someone if we were going to be able to last more than that with them? 2 weeks or 6 months doesn't mean anything about having to be in love. It would be a quick way to know if things will be worth pursuing. I mean, you know they want the same things, right? Dylan hadn't drank that much. He was very logical. I was a lightweight, and the rum was mixing with the sugar, and I could barely focus. Nodding wobbly, I took a couple more large pulls on the straw and then set my drink down and picked up my phone. 2 weeks. Yeah, I like that idea. Do you really think we should do this? My hands were shaking because of the alcohol. Okay, no. It was because I was about to commit to something I wasn't sure I wanted to. Dylan laughed. He leaned close to me, his eyes dark and shadowed with meaning. It's this, or we resign ourselves to marrying each other. He searched my face, as if maybe that really was an option. I shook my head and laughed at the absurdity of it. I didn't need a couple drinks to look at Dylan and realize if I didn't jump on doing this and finding a man on my own, I would watch Dylan disappear from my life as he got married and had kids. No way would his wife let him hang out with me the way we'd grown accustomed. The thought of him leaving me was abysmal. I nodded my head jerkily. Let's do it. I submitted my profile and hurriedly drank more. I needed to get drunk. Things were getting serious fast. Let's see if we get matched. He laughed and put his phone away. I took solace in knowing that just because we got matched didn't mean I had to marry him. But I suddenly was excited to find who each of us was paired with. It would be awesome if we were paired together and we could laugh about it. Of course, we would never agree to do it, but it would be funny to see just how much alike we really were. Would they find someone who was the right match for me? At that race, no one would be better than Dylan, but he wasn't a possibility. I sure hoped they matched me to someone perfect because I was striking out left and right. Chapter 4. Dylan. The steady rhythm of my steps pushed back the migraine that had been building all night. Kayla had had too much to drink, and I left for our morning run alone with the sun still a distant plan on the horizon. We were matched on the clickandwed.com site shortly after 2 a.m. The double beep of the app on my phone had woken me from my not-so-sound sleep. Staring at her profile with the blurry eyes of lost sleep, I hoped she would accept mine. I recognized the entire thing as what it was, a last-ditch effort to claim her. Would she let me? I relished in my speed as I pumped my arms and pushed harder. My house came into view, and after a few minutes, Kayla's house, 5 doors down, came into view as well. The sun was just cresting over the mountainside, and light shone off of our front windows. I kicked harder when I saw her dark hair against the lightness of my front door. I stopped at the end of my driveway and walked the rest of the way. Hands on my hips and breathing hard, I nodded at her. Kayla approached me, a drink holder in one hand and her sunglasses in the other. I brought some of our smoothies, extra protein for you since you're being a good boy today. Did you want to take a shower first or skip it for a bit? I'll grab a shower really quick. Meet you out back? I snaked my drink before she could disappear around the side of the house. No way was I going to hang out with her on the hammock and smell like I just ran a few miles. I probably had alcohol coming out my pores as well as the garlic in my dinner the night before. I wanted to entice her to stay with me, not make her a runaway. We had seen each other in every possible scenario. In college, we had messed around one drunken night, and I never forgot it. Some nights, my dreams brought the night's events into close focus. Kayla didn't remember it, which was actually a hard blow to my ego. Hurrying through my shower, I remembered her favorite cologne and dabbed it on afterwards. I didn't want to be too desperate, but I knew the end was in sight. One way or the other, things had to change. I didn't know if I was strong enough to push it the way I didn't want to go. But my aching heart would demand that I accept it. I grabbed my protein smoothie from the counter and joined Kayla. Designed to be a haven, the landscaped backyard was often Kayla's escape, as well as mine. I'd created a wraparound deck which extended around the edges of the backyard in varying levels. The covered porch encircled a large grassy area, which sloped to the pool on the far side. Everything was created with an eye toward family and future children. I always thought of being married, always thought of children and a family, because I was always with the woman I loved. She didn't think of me that way, but that didn't stop my dreams. Kayla kicked softly back and forth on the large yellow hammock. Under the shade of the big chestnut tree, sunlight speckled down on her in a fascinating pattern of bright diamonds and squares. Her face lit up when she saw me, hiding a modicum of anxiety. That was fast. I'm glad. We have a lot to go over. This might have to count as a business meeting. I can't believe we drank that much last night. I laughed, claiming the seat beside her, grateful to the hammock gods for pushing us closer together as we swung. You drank last night. I didn't drink more than 2. Do you even remember me bringing you home last night? I had carried her up to bed and just took her shoes off. She probably didn't remember anything, which was confirmed by the shake of her head. Would she mention the match? Would she say she was going to pass on me or accept me? Of course, she had no idea it was me. We were best friends, but I didn't remember ever mentioning my mother's maiden name. I don't think Kayla ever took notice of my first name. I had always gone by Dylan because Sheldon was a pretentious ploy for carrying on the family nobility. We sat there in silence for a moment, sipping our drinks. Would I have to broach the subject? Did she even remember we'd signed up together? I got matched, she blurted out, avoiding my gaze when I turned my head to look at her. Was she surprised? I caught a whiff of her scent, and I remembered how much I loved the smell of hibiscus. One of the reasons I was going to Hawaii in just a couple weeks. I would be able to be around Kayla without worrying I was going to stare at her with longing. I was fast turning into a dimwit. I needed this resolved. Taking a drag on my straw, I waited, nudging her after a moment. Really? Wrapping her hand around the crook of my elbow, she leaned her head on my shoulder, then lifted it again. I'm scared. What am I doing? I don't know if I really want to get married. She shook her head, her cheeks bright. I was thinking it would take some time to find a match. Wait, from what I understand, you're not technically married on the honeymoon option. What I gathered was, if you chose the honeymoon option, you were going to go forward as if you were married and act like you're on your honeymoon and see if you like each other. If you decide to move forward with being married afterwards, then you would. Does that sound right to you? If I couldn't get Kayla to go along with the match, I didn't have much in my corner that was different from the last 16 years. The one thing Kayla didn't believe in was divorce. If she thought she would be getting married before she went on the honeymoon, she would never do it. Although, she probably would be better off if she just got married. She probably should have gone with the 6-month deal. Okay, that makes more sense. I just didn't want to get married to someone I wouldn't be able to be around for the rest of my life. You know, I need someone I can rely on and I find attractive. Someone I need. Hopefully I can figure that out in 2 weeks, right? She laughed but ducked her head. I knew she was embarrassed about the whole topic, and I pushed her into doing the app because enough was enough. Did she see me as the one she could rely on? I know she found me attractive. She'd told me once that she couldn't get through the day without talking to me. If that wasn't need, I don't know what qualified. Are you going to go for it? Were you only matched to the one guy? Until that moment, I hadn't considered that as a possibly. I worried at the top of my straw, chewing it flat. Hopefully, she had only been matched to one man. Our answers were pretty close to the same based on how she answered last night. I knew we were perfect for each other. Plus, with the $2,000 price tag, I wasn't sure how many people would be on the fairly new site yet. Yeah, just one. She didn't say anything else, which worried me. I cocked my head to the side, still drinking from my flattened straw. Speaking from the corner of my mouth, I watched her for a reaction. What? Is he ugly? I'd used a stock photo and adjusted the levels to put the picture drastically into contrast. Had I not done a good enough job? Had I picked the wrong kind of guy? I couldn't really tell, but there's great info on his profile I like. I just don't know if I like it enough to marry him, you know? She twisted her lips to the side, swallowing. Kayla looked down at her lap. I'm confused. What's the problem? I tried to hide my mounting panic. What if she didn't like the fake profile for me? Wouldn't that be ironic that I couldn't get her to like the real me, and even the fake bad boy that I conjured up didn't appeal to her? She shrugged, her elbow nudging mine. No, he's just... I don't know. I'm just being too picky again. You're the guy I compare all of them to. Her sideways grin was tinged with sadness. Shaking my head, I wished she wouldn't talk like that to me. Even though it was harmless, it still hurt. Holding out my hand, I hit her back with my own elbow. Let me see. Pushing some buttons, Kayla reluctantly handed me her cell phone with the profile opened up. It was exactly the one I'd put up. Sheldon Anderson. I had created the perfect profile to appeal to her bad boy taste. Without lying. I did love motorcycling. She just didn't know that about me. I had to protect some of myself from her. That way, if nothing happened between her and I did have to leave, there would be some things in my life that weren't tainted with her memory. A small part of my heart planned on her not choosing me. Even after all the desperate measures I was taking, it was more than possible. What's wrong with him? He looks fine. I couldn't even pretend to be jealous. Even though part of me wanted to shake her and ask why she couldn't like me for me, love me for me. All I wanted was for her to acknowledge the ideal match we would make. Nothing. I guess I just wanted to know what you thought before just jumping into anything. You think I should go through with it? She begged me for an answer with her eyes, as if telling me she would do whatever I thought was right. I sensed part of her didn't want to, and I wasn't going to go along with that part. If it had been any other guy but me she'd been matched to, I would yank her out of it so fast. But this was me she was paired with, even if she didn't know. I needed her to say yes. I needed one last chance to get through to her. I needed her to click I do. Chapter 5. Kayla. Everything was happening too fast. Ever since Dylan had talked me into clicking I do, it was like my life was a whirlwind of preparation. I was due to leave the day after Dylan left for his big vacation, since we had to close the amusement park for the next few weeks. Anyway, for renovations, we figured now would be the best time for me to take my honeymoon too. My honeymoon. If my mom found out, she would kill me. At least I could tell her I wasn't married, which kind of made me feel dirty. I was going on this honeymoon with a man I hadn't met, and I wasn't technically married to him either. If we agreed to pursue the relationship afterwards, then we were agreeing to be married. On the honeymoon, though, what would he expect from me? All of the connotations attached to the word honeymoon were more physical and intimate than I was ready to commit to at the point. I didn't know the guy. What was I doing? I constantly had to regulate my breathing, just stop what I was doing and breathe. Taking a shower, I had to lean my hands on the wall and hang my head while I caught my breath. Packing. Yeah. I sat on the bed and leaned forward, breathing with my elbows braced on my knees. Dylan left the night before on a red-eye, and I already missed him. I locked up both of our houses and headed towards the airport. Parking my car in long-term parking, I grimaced at the weight of my bags, pulling at me as I trudged to the covered waiting area. I needed to catch a shuttle to the terminals. Why hadn't I done what Dylan did and caught a cab? I got through security and decided I needed to stop in for a coffee. My plane would leave in about an hour, and thankfully I got there early with some cushion time. Standing in line, I couldn't help overhearing the conversations between the woman in front of me and the cashier. With a hand thrust through her tousled hair, the woman barely held her tears in check. Please, just a black cup of coffee. I haven't eaten since I left London. Someone stole my cashier's checks, and I have no money. I have my wallet, but nothing else. I angled my head to see her face. She obviously had been through a lot. Red-rimmed eyes and puffy cheeks were not signs that were easily faked. If they were, it was a telltale sign that the person doing the faking needed more help than what they were professing. I felt bad for anyone in need, and I hated that she was being relegated to begging a man in an overpriced cafe in the world's tiniest international airport. Leaning over, I tapped the counter in front of the cashier, who was adamantly shaking his head. I smiled when I caught his eye. Can you combine our orders, please? I would like a double-shot granita with chocolate and banana flavoring. I also want one of your scones, and I'm thinking that cream cheese mess over there looks delicious. I don't know what it is. I just want you to put it on the pile. I nudged the woman and whispered, Get whatever you want. Even get a little extra so you have some to take with you on the rest of your trip. Are you sure? She looked at me, desperation pushing the pride I knew was there down. At my gentle nod, she looked at the cashier. Can I get one of those sandwiches, please? And some cream with my black coffee? She looked down, as if she was embarrassed to accept help. Add a few more scones, maybe 2, and also 2 orange juices and a bottled water. When the cashier rang everything up, I slid my card through the swiper and put in my PIN. After the man handed us our food in our own bags, I smiled, and before walking away said, I hope you have a safe trip. She stood there and stared at me with her mouth half open. Thank you so much. You too. I ignored the sparkle of unshed tears in her eyes. Biting into my blueberry scone, I jolted at the soft buzz in my pocket. Dylan better be texting me finally. I couldn't wait to hear how his trip had started. Dylan, have you left yet? I glanced at the TV monitor with the flight information on it. We were running a few minutes behind. I sighed and texted with one thumb while I claimed another bite. Not yet. Just grabbed a scone. Heading to plane now. Have fun in New York. Dylan. I never said New York. Where are you going? I narrowed my eyes. Hadn't he said New York? Why was I thinking the Big Apple? Hawaii, the island of Kauai. I sent you my itinerary. Did you get it? Dylan. Good luck. Keep an open mind. I got a match. We'll both be married when we get back. Fingers crossed. His last text sobered me. I reached my gate and stared at the screen. My boarding pass was just behind it, but I didn't care. Wait, he was matched already? Was he meeting her on his trip? Had he turned his trip into his honeymoon? What did he mean he never said New York? I thought that's what we agreed to. He was supposed to be going on a business trip and inspecting some equipment we were thinking of ordering for a new ride, but we'd never actually specified that's what he was going to be doing. I always pushed him away when we started to get romantic, which made sense for me, but that was because I didn't want to have anything happen to us. Dylan always dated. I was never worried, though, because they never ended up being anyone serious. The few times I dated, they'd always crash so spectacularly I went to him for consolation. But a wife? Or husband? Nothing was serious or possible to me until he'd been matched. I knew nothing was serious for me. But Dylan. Without overanalyzing anything, I was selfishly jealous. I didn't want to text him anymore. I needed a break from the onslaught of information, and the no electronics rule on the plane would be a nice excuse for not texting him back. I would get on the plane and just read. As I boarded and took my seat, I knew there would be no way I'd be able to focus on any of the books I brought. I could already see I was going to overanalyze Dylan's new wife and what she would look like. What would she be like? Would she and I get along? Knowing she was kissing Dylan and sleeping with Dylan and being with Dylan all the time, I knew I wouldn't like her. How dare she? Who did she think she was? His wife? Wait, she could be. She would get all the great parts of him. She would replace me and I would be alone. He would eventually leave me and I would be all alone. Had I taken him for granted? Of course I had. Was that one of the things I did wrong? That's how I did it. I always assumed he would just be there for me. What had I done? My layover was on Oahu, and I still didn't want to answer his text message. I did have to check in on the app as I was traveling. The notifications dinged at me repeatedly when I sat in the Waikiki airport. On the little island hop flight, I looked excitedly at the crystal clear water and the beautiful green islands beneath me. I could do this. Dylan was doing it. I could do it. I would just be clear about my expectations and tell him we didn't have anything in common and that we weren't going to go any further. I would have to express I wasn't interested in anything physical until I knew if we were going to be together for a while. I wasn't in it for a quick lay. After landing on Kauai, I stood at the baggage claim and scrolled through the app. I checked in using my GPS. Then it gave me a checklist of tasks my partner and I had to accomplish in the next 2 weeks. I wrinkled my nose and glared at the list. Take a selfie upon check-in within the first 24 hours. Do something neither of you have done yet. Together? Eat local fare. Try something adventurous together. I rolled my eyes at the list and didn't bother reading more. Creating a fist, I shoved my hand into my stomach and pressed just below my navel. A wave of nausea left me feeling weak, and I hoped my nerves weren't getting the best of me. Maybe the climate change was affecting me more than I'd thought possible. The dry, cool spring of North Idaho compared to the humid heat of Hawaii was enough to leave me feeling disoriented. Plus, all the stress from not texting Dylan back, combined with being in Hawaii with someone I didn't know, was getting to me. I needed to sit down. What if Dylan forgot me? What if he wanted to move away because of his new wife? He was so easy to get along with. How could anyone not want to be married to him? Soon as I claimed my luggage, I hailed a taxi to the Kauai Shores Hotel in Kapa'a on the southeast part of the island. A headache was forming, but I allowed the gorgeous scenery to sway me into relaxing. I looked for animals, blinking at the roosters and hens running along the roadside. I couldn't even muster up excitement at their presence. It would only be a matter of time, and I would be walking up to the hotel room door and meeting my husband. Did I have the nerves for this? Chapter 6. Dylan. The table wasn't that hard to procure, but the sushi was a couple blocks away, and I wasn't sure what exact time Kayla would get there. If I left the dish out in the warm Hawaiian air, it wouldn't be as crisp or fresh as it should be. Not the best impression when you wanted to propose to the girl of your dreams. The Kauai condos had a private section of a long beach along the southern part of the island. The sand wasn't too fine or too coarse, and I kicked my flip-flops off as soon as I could. Every time I caught a beautiful sight like a cloud's shadow cruising across the ocean's cerulean blue surface, I searched for Kayla to point it out to her. I kept forgetting that I was waiting for her. She would be there soon, and then I would have a chance to broach the subject I wanted her to seriously consider. Back at home was hard to encourage real talk. Nothing was changing there. So to get to a new landscape, I had a better chance of convincing Kayla to try something different. Would I be successful? My parents recommended the locally owned condos. They traveled a lot, and their favorite was in the more modest section of Kauai. I had requested a bottom floor room for balcony access to the pool and the beach. Kayla was outdoorsy, and we both would want things to be as easy as possible. Plus, I'd seen her around stairs, and as athletic as she was, stairs were not allies of hers. Her itinerary had been sent to me via the app, and she was scheduled to be at the condo right around dinner time. I kept checking my watch, but the hands wouldn't move, and if I didn't know any better, they were going backward. Then in the space of time it took to count a wave, an hour would disappear, and my panic would rise. Would she be happy to be there? Had she gotten on the plane? My phone double-dinged, and I reached reflexively for my phone. The app liked to let me know when things were happening or when I needed to do something. I needed an assistant for work who was as on the ball as the app was. Whoever their designer was, they were brilliant. Your match has checked in at the Kauai airport. She would be at the condo soon. I probably had enough time to get to the sushi restaurant and pick up my order and return to set everything up. I couldn't believe my chance was there. I would finally have her all to myself, without the distractions of work, our homes, or anything else she might run off to. After I set up the entire welcome for her, I took a breath. It wasn't a welcome. Really, it was an opportunity to proposition her. I even went out of my way to set up the table with her favorite appetizer, spicy tuna on seaweed salad. I preferred hot hamburgers, but my girl liked appetizers. Since we were in Hawaii, I thought it would be best to go with the local seafood. Plus, it looked like local fare would get one of the tasks checked off the Click and Wed.com app list. I took a second and snapped a picture of the table just in case. At the edge of the ocean, staring into the vastness of the sunset, I stood on the sand and welcomed the warmth of the water as it rushed up to my calves. My feet accepted the steady thrum of the water. The lady at check-in had warned me it was Portuguese man-of-war season, and that I needed to be careful. It was most likely why the beach was empty of guests. I looked deep into the water and searched for the small balloon-shaped bodies, but I hadn't been able to spot one yet. All kinds of doubts swarmed me. Was it worth it to give up? I had reached a point where either we addressed the love I had for her, and she accepted we were meant to be together, or it was time to move on. I waited for so long, hoping and praying I would get her attention. She never clamped onto it. She never caught on to the fact that I was here. I was never leaving. I guessed, though, with my plan to either be together or move on, I would be essentially leaving her, which was the worst kind of betrayal I could imagine. I'd be no better than her father. The first time I'd met Kayla would haunt me if she chose to reject me. My parents had bought a house in a newly developed subdivision in Hayden. Kayla and I were both only children, and I was outside bouncing my almost flat basketball. Or trying. With my other hand, I'd worked on eating a candy bar I'd smuggled into my backpack. My mom was always trying to cut sugar from the household diet and other food I needed to cope. Bopping out of her garage, Kayla and stopped when she'd seen me. Her French braid tamed her hair, and she'd watched me while chewing on her finger. After a minute, she'd walked closer, her sandals white and brown. Hi. I'd shoved my candy bar behind my back, embarrassed to get caught eating when I was my size. She wouldn't like me, not someone as sweet as that. She reached out and stopped me. Don't hide who you are. We can be friends. Do you have another one? She'd had dimples back then, and when she flashed them, I think I would have given her a whole truckload of candy bars to see them again. We can be friends? I didn't have any friends then. I was new in the state, and I would most likely not make any friends very fast. Kids like me never fit in. It was kids like Kayla that were popular. She slid her arm around mine. Are you kidding? We're going to be best friends until we die. Let's shake on it. She spit into her palm and offered it to me, more dimples and deep blue eyes. Stunned, I'd spit into my own hand and grabbed her warm skin with mine. I'd sworn then and there never to hurt her, no matter what. The longer we'd been friends, the more I fell for her. There wasn't a time period where she left me to be with the more popular kids. She never canceled our plans to go with anyone better. Kayla had always treated me like I was number one. I'd reciprocated in kind, and I seemed to orbit around her. But it hurt. Being around her so much and only being half present as what I wanted was like dipping my heart in acid and then rinsing it off with tap water. Being around her was a bittersweet pain that I endured willingly, but my strength was wearing down. Was there a point where my heart's pain would be more important than hers? Would I be forced to push my needs ahead of hers, simply because I wasn't sure I could continue surviving the way I was? I had set everything into place for the chance that she wouldn't choose me. Choose us. My shields were lowering into place, and I only had the next 14 days to get her to choose us. We had a future, and it would be amazing, but only if she could commit to me. What would I say? I'd gone over and over in my mind for what to do and how to offer the proposition to her. Did I tell her that if she chose no, I'd given instructions to my lawyer? As dramatic as it sounded, it was exactly what I'd done. A couple appeared on the path that angled along the top of the hill leading to the beach. Silver-haired and slow, the older pair held hands, and she pointed toward the water while he chuckled. They saw me and nodded, smiling as if they knew the secret to forever. I wanted forever. I wanted to hold Kayla's hand and kiss her whenever I wanted, not just on the forehead when she'd fallen asleep. I needed to be able to rely on her for happiness, not just business decisions and an occasional date. Setting my jaw, I watched the couple continue on their journey. I would lay it all on the table. Kayla wouldn't have any reason to say no. She'd choose me. She'd be happy. I had to believe that I could do it. I had to have faith in something, because a sinking sensation in my chest reassured me that even if she didn't choose us, I had an alternate plan in place. That had to account for something. But what? That I was prepared for rejection? Chapter 7. Kayla. My hands shook as I reached across the check-in counter and accepted the key card the woman handed me. She smiled with her painted lips. Shiny black hair had been pulled back, accentuating her brown eyes. Mahalo. A small white name tag on her pink floral blouse read Tammy. Swallowing, I nodded at Tammy and whispered back to her, "Mahalo." She studied my face as if she sensed my panic. Stepping to the side of the counter, she reached out and touched the back of my hand. "Ma'am, are you all right? Can I get you something?" She was the first one to ask me if I was okay. I hadn't been feeling well for a while. Was that a sign that I wasn't doing the right thing? Did I look like I was going to throw up? Because I certainly felt like it. I smiled tightly. "No, of course, I'm fine. Thank you." I worked my tongue to swallow again, but gave up with my mouth dry with nerves. How was I going to leave a good first impression when I was so anxious I could barely stand up without wobbling? From somewhere, I pulled up energy and made myself smile so I could make my way to my room, pulling my luggage along beside me. The coral pink carpet with navy blue fleur-de-lis designs spun around me, and I focused on the ceiling and the walls. Who chose such atrocious colors? When I blinked and things refocused, they looked better and even soothing with an ivory base. I followed the carpet lines down the hall away from the lobby. My room. I mean, our room was numbered at 168. I stayed on the first floor and looked for my room number. 160. 162. 164. 166. There it was. 168th. I stood outside the door and took deep, studying breaths. Smoothing my hair, I straightened my shirt and glanced over my outfit to make sure I was presentable. I couldn't hide my flushed skin, but I didn't have to admit to anyone that my shaky legs didn't want to hold me. I stared at my room key with an aerial picture of the island Kauai on it. After a moment, I somehow made my hand slide the key in until the light above the lock glowed green. I turned the handle and pushed in, expecting to find someone, but thankful a quiet, empty room was all that greeted me. Air conditioning hummed in the background. Goosebumps trailed my arms. I was cold. How was it possible to be so cold in the middle of the tropics? Was I in the tropics? Everything was blurring together, and I wasn't sure I was in Hawaii. I dropped my bags inside and left them by the door, closing it behind me. Crossing the room, I turned off the small air conditioner sticking from the side of the wall. The room was set up as a junior suite with a small kitchenette, a bathroom, a balcony with a full slider, a set of closets, a king-sized bed with a navy blue coverlet, and a table. I leaned against the nearest support, which happened to be a chair, and glanced down at the top of the round table. A yellow post-it with hand-printed block letters had been stuck to the surface. "Change into beach clothes and come to the balcony." Beach clothes? Did that mean I was supposed to get into my swimsuit? Or just change out of my comfortable clothes? I was overanalyzing everything. Plus, who did he think he was? He was bossing me around. We would have to talk about that. I wasn't into being bossed around. The only person who was allowed to boss me around was Dylan, and even then he had to get my permission first. I changed into my swimsuit, stopping to rest every few minutes, and threw on my beach cover, which was really just a wrap I tied in a halter dress style behind my neck. The soft blues and purples tie-dyed together soothed me, and I focused on the soft swirls when things got too intense. My stomach rumbled again. The scone hadn't lasted that long. The ache could be from hunger. My dizziness could be from hunger. It wasn't unheard of for people my age to get low blood sugar. You didn't have to be diabetic to need to keep on top of eating. Maybe I should grab something to eat before going to the balcony. Was he waiting out there? The curtain was drawn, and I hadn't had the guts to peek outside yet. I lingered over my phone. Did I take it? Number I needed to leave it behind. I would be too tempted to call Dylan when I needed to be focused on my potential husband. Was Sheldon outside? I stood in front of the curtain, hesitating to take another steadying breath. Pushing the curtain aside, I opened the balcony door. Glancing up, I gasped. A trail of white and yellow dusted hibiscus flowers sprinkled the cobblestone pathway. Little post-its with black arrows had been stuck to the rocks, mixed with the flowers. The entire trail led toward the beach and the sky, which looked like it was on fire with its brilliant colors and clouds streaking together. Palm trees created striking silhouettes against the fiery sky. Stalling, I bent every few steps and picked a hibiscus flower from the ground and smelled it. The scent was my favorite. The unknown ahead of me prevented me from truly enjoying it. Every smell was heightened, and I was tempted to breathe out of my mouth as my stomach continued turning over. As I crested the hill leading down to the beach, I stopped, taking in the scene. A small round table had been set up about 8 feet from the water's edge. A white linen tablecloth fluttered in the soft breeze as it wrapped around the table's legs. A lantern glowed a warm orange color that didn't compete with the setting sun off in the distance. Pinks, oranges, and purples danced across the water and framed a man standing at the gently curling waves. His dark hair moved in the breeze off the water, and his white shirt lapels blew open. The man's back was to me. I appreciated the curve of his calf muscles and the black lines of his board shorts. There was something in the tilt of his head and in the straight line of his back that was familiar. Unsteady, I stopped, closing my eyes and licking my lips. After another moment, I kicked off my shoes and dug my toes into the soft sand. The warmth from the day had settled deep in the grains, and I soaked up as much as I could while the sand shifted beneath me. The waves slapped the beach, soothing and balanced. I swayed to the natural music and tried to hear for any other sounds of people. But the crash of water and the breeze rustling through the fronds above me hid every sound of others. I was grateful. I liked the idea that I was all by myself, even only for a minute. Just me. By myself. I mouthed reassurances to myself. You got this, Kay. You can do it. There's no reason to be nervous. This is a good thing. But I wasn't alone. I'd made the choice to come to Hawaii on my honeymoon. As the chills hit me again, I desperately wished for Dylan. Maybe I should go back to the room and text him. He would know what to say to make me feel better. I had so many doubts. The thought was more appealing than I wanted to admit. What if I did? What if I ran away and didn't go through with it? The app wouldn't let me get away with leaving. I'd already checked in, and the app was already reminding me to get started on tasks. I'm sure there was one that was about introductions and playing get-to-know-you games. I opened my eyes and focused on the table set with plates alongside umbrella drinks and the soft, glowing lantern. My stomach roiled again. I stepped closer and closer until I stood right next to the table. Silky linen caressed my legs in the breeze, and I shivered as another wave of chills covered me. A scent reached me, and I studied the plates more closely. The sight of my favorite spicy tuna on seaweed salad made me narrow my eyes. The fish odor didn't help my nausea, and I was filled with the overwhelming desire to pitch the table into the ocean. Instead, I focused on the contents of my plate. How did he know? The bright colors of my favorite drink with its garnishes of pineapple and cherries drew my eyes. I glanced at the other plate filled with shrimp kebabs and Caesar salad. How many times had I seen a table set just like that? A margarita sat at the other place setting. I was too dizzy to understand what the plate's contents meant. Something wasn't right, and I gulped for fresh air, even though I was surrounded by an ocean and sky so full of fresh it was scary. I grabbed at the edge of the table, the glass and plates shaking and tinkling as I jostled its surface. He must have heard the ruckus from where he was, because he dropped his head and turned around. I got a flash of ripped ab muscles, finely etched pectoral muscles, and a light dusting of dark hair on a well-tanned chest. My mouth watered and then dried up like the sand I stood on. The bile rose up in my throat, and I clutched a hand over my mouth. Chapter 8. Dylan. My palms were sweaty. I wasn't sure when Kayla would get there. As much as I loved the anticipation of seeing her again, the circumstances were less than ideal. Would she be excited to see me? Would she be upset that I was the one she'd been matched with? I couldn't contain my apprehension as I clenched my fists at my sides and inhaled the salty sea air slowly. Should be about time. Maybe I should sit down and wait for her. I turned. A soft gasp brought my gaze up. Smiling, I took in the sight of Kayla in her purple and blue dress, standing by the table I'd set up for her. My happiness faded, and I frowned as she covered her mouth and sprinted back the way she'd come. I glanced at the table where she'd been standing, and then broke into a run after her. Had I done something wrong? Was I that abhorrent she would need to run from me? Kayla! Wait, let's talk about this. I kicked harder, but my toeless Adidas sandals prohibited me from catching her. She was already faster than me on the sprints we did, and that was fully dressed in running gear. I was at a distinct disadvantage. Chasing her across the patio and across the flowers I had lain down for her, I stumbled into our slider door. She hadn't closed that or bothered closing the bathroom door. Light spilled from the doorway, and I slowed to an almost standstill. What was going on? Why hadn't she closed the door? I approached cautiously. Kayla's temper was a slow burn and she rarely got mad, but when she did, she was very vocal about it. As I got closer to the doorway, I reached out to knock softly on the panel. The sound of throwing up alarmed me. Was she throwing up because I was the one waiting for her? I bypassed knocking and instead pushed the door open. She was terrified of throwing up. The last time she'd done it, I had been there for her, just like I would be there for her now. I pulled back her hair as she huddled over the toilet. Rubbing her back, I scowled at the heat coming off her skin. She had a fever. At least her symptoms weren't because of me. After slumping to the side of the toilet, her cheeks flushed. Kayla was abnormally still. I carefully pulled her into my arms and carried her to the bed. Burning up, she needed to cool off. I pulled her wrap off along with her swimsuit and ignored the sight of her naked flesh. With the cool air flowing over her, I pulled her bags to the luggage pedestal and dug around until I found her pajamas. I slid them up her legs and pulled the top carefully over her head. I wiped her face with a cool washcloth and settled her into the bed on the soft pillows and blankets. I set an ice bucket on the nightstand beside her in case she needed to throw up again, and I went back to the beach to retrieve the table and food. She wasn't feeling well, but I couldn't let the food go to waste. Packing everything back into the room, I put away all the different items and settled in to take care of Kayla. If she had the flu, it was nothing to treat lightly. I flipped on the television and kept the volume low, every once in a while, glancing at her to make sure she was still breathing. Her long lashes rested in the shadows beneath her eyes, and I felt bad for deceiving her. I picked up a shrimp kebab and leaned over as I took a bite. The double ding of the app on my phone was probably going to drive me nuts before the end of the honeymoon. I would blame any irritability on the nagging about tasks and checking in. Just thinking of the way I'd had to check in on my location with the app made me scowl. Checking in had been an ordeal since I couldn't figure out how to turn on my Wi-Fi at the plane, and I was running out of time to get my location logged. I'd accidentally set the wrong time for arrival by a day. Swiping the screen, I squinted tiredly at the phone. The anxiety of the last few days and weeks was getting to me, and Kayla's anticlimactic arrival had left me unsure what was going to happen. A list of tasks that we needed to complete blinked at me. They weren't that extensive and just encouraged us to spend time together, which I liked. A selfie at the moment wasn't exactly possible. Unless I edged over to the side of the bed and angled the phone to see both of us. I grinned at the pallor of Kayla's skin, not because she was sick, but because she was going to kill me for taking a picture of her like that. Maybe that would redirect her anger from my lies. If I didn't care so much about the outcome of our honeymoon, I wouldn't try so hard. But I needed her. This was my last chance. Chapter 9. Kayla. The next 2 days passed in a crazy whirlwind of fatigue, nausea, fever, trips to the bathroom, throwing up, and I'm not sure what else. Only the apocalypse of all viruses would attack me on my honeymoon. I had to be hallucinating. I kept seeing Dylan, like the first night I'd been there. I think I saw him turn around, but I had to throw up too bad, so I'd run before I could get a good look. I couldn't be sure. Maybe my husband looked like Dylan. I woke up, sleeping in a clean bed, dressed in my favorite pajamas, and I only mildly ached. Mostly my stomach felt like I'd done 10,000 sit-ups, but there was weakness in the rest of my muscles as well. Had Dylan changed my clothes? Visions from the last 2 days swarmed my mind, buzzing around with an insistent demand to be remembered. It was him. I hadn't made it up. Dylan was there. Had he followed me? No, wait. He left before me. He hadn't said where he was going. Maybe he had rescued me from my husband. I didn't have a memory of that guy, just his back. The slider opened, and Dylan walked inside. I blinked at the light from the curtain being pushed aside. What was happening? Morning. How are you feeling? Dylan's kind eyes perused me, and I was grateful to see him. I sighed, sinking into the pillows. I hadn't realized how tense I'd been until I relaxed. What happened? I'm supposed to meet my husband here. Have you seen him? I licked my dry lips and tried to push myself to a sitting position. Dylan rushed to my side and helped me sit up. His touch was soft and comforting, but also made me more than aware of my pajamas and his swimsuit and thin t-shirt. He left. Dylan studied me with somber eyes, his lips drawn down in a frown. My gaze flew to his face. Was I relieved or offended? What? My match had seen me and hated me on sight. Or maybe when he found out I was sick, he ran away. I knew it was too good to be true. I'm just kidding. He didn't leave. It's me. Kayla. You're married to me. He said it with a laugh, but I could see that he was nervous too. And he should be. Wait. That's not possible. Your name isn't Sheldon Anderson. It's Dylan Drake. The memory from when we opened the company about 5 years ago, and he had signed his name as Sheldon, flashed in my mind. No matter. His last name was still Drake. Yeah, that's my first name. I use my mom's maiden name. He chewed on the full curve of his bottom lip, and I realized he had taken a seat by me on the bed, and somehow we had gotten to only inches away from each other. Oh, wow. I forgot that. It's been forever since I thought of your first name as Sheldon. I thought you said you hated your first name. I was trying hard to piece everything together, but it was difficult when I wasn't quite sure what was going on. I was still weak from being sick, and there were a lot of holes in what had happened the last couple days. I know, I do hate my first name, but when I signed up for the clickandwed.com program a few months ago, I didn't want to use my real name. I didn't want anyone to be able to check me out or make a decision based on the information they found. What if they found out about you? He adjusted himself so that we faced each other on the bed. I pulled the blanket up over my lap. What would they find out about me? I dug my fingers into the soft blanket. You hid something from me. A pretty big something. We can't be married. You knew we were matched, and you didn't say anything. You've known for a while. I was trying to work myself up into anger. Except I didn't get mad easy. And Dylan knew that. It took a lot for my temper to get worked up, and even though he lied to me, I knew why he had done it. I wouldn't have come if I'd known I was matched to him. We'd known it was a possibility. I just hadn't realized Dylan would actually push to make it happen. Plus, I was really tired, and it was hard to be mad at my best friend. My silence must have unnerved him. He reached out and twisted a chunk of my hair between his strong fingers. His soft, deep voice made everything around us fade. He sucked me into his dark gaze as he watched me. Are you mad? Licking my lips, I flicked my gaze between him and the door. I was suddenly overcome with the need to escape. I want to be upset with you, but I can't. It's you. And you helped me while I was sick. I shrugged, stretching my legs a little bit, nudging him from beneath the blanket. He stayed where he was and didn't take the hint. It's me. He said it with a hint of despondency and released my gaze, dropping my hair at the same time. Had I hurt his feelings? I slowed down. What had I said? Well, yeah, it's you. If it had been someone else, I think I would be really upset. Thankfully, it's you. Isn't that a good thing? I looked at my hands and then glanced up at his face. And I think I threw up on your hands. It's hard to be mad at you when you are taking care of me, and I threw up on your hands. He widened his eyes. You remember doing that. My answering grin must have told him what he needed to hear. He wrapped his arms around me and started to tickle me. A couple of weeks in paradise with my best friend didn't seem like that big of a deal. Chapter 10. Dylan. Keeping my focus couldn't be more difficult when she looked all soft and cuddly in the large bed. While I was relieved she wasn't mad, I expected her righteous anger. She had every right to be upset and demand that I leave. If I'd been thinking through what I was doing, I wouldn't have banked on Kayla's anger. She didn't get mad, which was good for me as her best friend, but sucked for me as her business partner. I was the one who got upset at late shipments or unpaid invoices. She just rolled with it. I loved her easygoing nature with most things, but this wasn't a business mistake. This was something different, bigger. I took the matter very critically. If I was in her shoes, I would have been mad as a bobcat in a tub of water. So, why wasn't she mad? I was confused and a little worried that maybe she wasn't taking me seriously. Why aren't you mad? I lied to you. I didn't want to go any further and give her reasons to be mad at me, but I needed to know why she wasn't. My insecurities reared inside me, and I didn't want to choke on them as I talked with her. I don't have any reason to be mad at you. You probably meant this as a prank. It wouldn't be the first time you played a joke on me. She rolled her eyes and cuddled further back into the pillows. Her color was coming back, and I wanted to reach out and trace the ceramic smoothness of her skin. I furrowed my brow. I've never played pranks on you. What was she talking about? Had she hallucinated while she'd been sick? She wiggled her fingers at me and laughed. Yeah, remember all those flowers on Valentine's Day and you signed the notes, "Be my Valentine"? How about the times when you left me little notes saying, "I love you"? You always give me little compliments that make me feel better. You're awesome like that. I know some of those were jokes and you generally meant them, or you felt pity for me because I wasn't with anyone. She arched a delicate eyebrow and pointed my way. This wouldn't be the first time you tried to make me feel better about myself. I blinked at her multiple times, trying to take in she thought my attempts at romance and kind gestures were jokes. Finally, I was able to speak after the initial shock wore off. Those were never jokes or pity emotions. I'm actually surprised. I didn't even have a coherent thought to add to the conversation. Of course, the fact that I was always grinning at her and winking at her probably gave things a more jovial bend than I intended. I leaned forward and put my head in my hands. I've never played pranks on you, Kayla. What's the matter? I thought you just did this to get me here on a holiday like you said we needed. She leaned forward and rubbed my back. The contact jarred me as my nerves were heightened. Her touch, for the first time, wasn't welcome. I'm sorry. I know you weren't joking with me. I hoped you were, but... She sighed. I'm not stupid. I know. I don't this for us. I think you're too generous with how you view people. You don't actually look for the ulterior motive. You take everything at face value. That's not always the smartest thing to do, Kayla. My words were muffled because I still couldn't lift my head up. I felt like all my efforts over the last 16 years had just slapped me in the face. She'd never seen them for what they were, which meant I had to fit 16 years' worth of love and devotion into the next 2 weeks. She didn't really see what she meant to me. How could she? If she didn't, she'd never say or act the way that she was. That kind of a task was daunting, and one I wasn't sure I was capable of undertaking. I lifted my head and avoided looking at her as I inspected my hands, spreading them and turning them over. Silence fell around us, and I finally glanced at her to see that her eyes were downcast, and she seemed crestfallen. What's wrong? It was my turn to console her. No matter what, I only ever wanted her to be happy. Her cheeks pinked, and she twisted her lips to the side as if she was embarrassed. I was looking forward to meeting my match. I was really hoping for some romance. You know that part of my life is rather dry. Plus, the chance to try for something I couldn't walk away from whenever I wanted to would have been really nice. One of those things where the decision was already made for me. I know that's pathetic. She lifted her shoulder and crossed her arms. The only reason I agreed to try that online marriage like you suggested was because no normal relationship has ever worked out for me. She forced a laugh and played with a chunk of her hair. Kayla didn't want my personal opinion on why her relationships didn't work out. When you constantly push people away, it made it hard to make things work. I recognized my luck that she hadn't pushed me away like the men she shoved from her life. She even kept other women at bay. I considered her, resting one elbow on my knee and my other hand back on the bed. Finally, the words burst from me, as if my heart had control, and my mind wasn't allowed to work anymore. Give me a try. Let's do this. We were matched by the computer you were hoping would match us. If nothing else, we can take a holiday. We've worked so hard. We deserve it. I clenched my jaw shut after the words fell from my mouth. Would she take my suggestion? What would she do? She looked at me, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Why would that type of suggestion make her sad? We can't. Dylan, you know we can't. I'd heard all of her excuses for why she couldn't be with men, and I'd heard more than enough of why we couldn't between her and me. But nothing made sense. Why? My desperation was beginning to strangle me. I had 2 weeks, and I had already lost 2 because of her flu. So 12 days. I had 12 days to get her to see how perfect we were for each other. I don't think desperate accurately described the way I was feeling. Because this is too important. She moved her hand between us, back and forth. Me then her, me then her. What we have, I won't jeopardize it. You know I don't commit well. She half laughed. I had to take the 2-week option over 6 months. Her tone was lighthearted, but the shadows in her eyes had taken on a sad and melancholic hue. Resigned, I put on my let's be best friends smile and sat up. She wasn't feeling well enough for me to continue pushing. Well, we've already paid for both the Click and Wed contract as well as the trip. Let's check out some of the sites and, if nothing else, write off everything as a tax deduction. There's a zip line in Poipu I want to check into for our next feature. If we like it, we might be able to get one up before July. Stay together? She bit her lip, worried. Well, we need to wait out the 2 weeks to get our deposits back. We also need to do whatever tasks the app decides to send us. Most of the hotels are full, so we'll be hard-pressed to get a room. Plus, why pay extra when we'll just be together most of the time anyway? I offered a comforting smile. Why was she making a big deal out of something that normally wouldn't be anything but second nature between us? We need a selfie. She wrinkled her nose as she reached up, tousled her hair, as if the mention of pictures meant she had to fix the way she looked. She couldn't look any more gorgeous. I wished I could make her see that. I grinned all-knowingly. I took one last night and sent it into the app. Her nostrils flared as she took in a deep breath and glared at me. She spoke in what I hoped was a joking tone. Oh, lovely. I can't wait to see what that one looks like. Could she be more upset with me over the picture than us? What if she wanted to be with me just as much as I did? But she was held back by her past. I could hope. Oh man, I could hope. Let's do it. I wasn't going to get wrapped up in her joking. She liked to do that, push me away when I tried to get an answer to something serious. She and I were better matched than she knew. Since we already had 16 years between us, a marriage would be like going home. She bit her lip again and watched me. Promise you won't try anything? I arched an eyebrow at her as if she was issuing me a challenge. Anything. Anything to try to make us be married. I don't want to lose us. She was clear in trying to make sure that there were no loopholes. I had to be clear as well. Subtlety was not going to win many points in the next 2 weeks. Sorry, Kayla girl. I'm not promising anything. I grinned at her stricken expression, and she couldn't tell if I was joking or not. I only had 2 weeks before I could lose everything. I'm not sure how much of my smile was sincere. Chapter 11. Kayla. 2 weeks with Dylan romancing me. I didn't think I would be able to fight that. He was my constant. We would never be able to work as a couple. He was too nice. I liked my boys bad and spontaneous. Dylan didn't have a spontaneous bone in his body. Everything had to be scheduled and figured out. And while it drove me nuts, I relied on him. He was the foundation of our company. He was the foundation for my sanity. If something went wrong with him, who would I have to fall back on? If we got into a romance together, I could pretty much guarantee I would push him away at some point. It's what I did. Pretending guys were the ones who chose to leave was my failsafe. If I made them leave, then it wasn't a big deal when they left. I was okay with it because I'd decided I didn't want them around anymore, like when they got too close or hit a level of intimacy I wasn't ready for. Most of them weren't fans of my relationship with Dylan. Another reason to kick them to the curb. A guy that was too close was one who could hurt me. I wouldn't tolerate that kind of pain. Dylan was as close as I could possibly allow, and I didn't want to lose that by adding the complications of the heart. A break did sound appealing, and we were already in Hawaii. A collection of the positives drowned out the negatives. There was only one bed, but he'd offered to sleep on the floor. So my arguments were null and void. I was still weak enough from the bug I didn't want to fight about anything. I gave in, and the small glimpse of triumph in his eyes frightened and exhilarated me at the same time. Dylan got me up and out of bed to go to the beach for a swim. As if I was solar powered, I relished the warmth of the sun. I was still too weak to go swimming or to fight any riptides, so I stayed on the beach. Signs up warning of box jellyfish and Portuguese man-of-war marred the view until we moved further onto the sand, closer to the water. I sat on a towel with my legs drawn up and a book resting on my lap. The umbrella Dylan had set up protected me from the burning power of the sun. I poked my toes out of the shade, still warmed by the comforting breeze off the water. I couldn't focus on my book with Dylan dipping in and out of the slight waves. He was very distracting looking with a muscular chest and the back of a runner. I may or may not have drifted in and out of sleep. Every time I woke up, Dylan was somewhere new. At one point, he bobbed in the water, taking in the sun. He was close enough to see his features, but far enough I couldn't tell if he was looking at me or not. Another time, I looked, and he waded closer to me, the sun glinting off the smattering of hair on his wet chest. Why had I never noticed how beautiful he was? It must be the bug talking. I had always noticed his good looks, but as he got closer and I could see the ripples of his muscles and the tenderness in his eyes, I wondered just what it was I was running from. Slipping back into sleep, and then awake again, became a pattern. I woke up to find Dylan lying on the tile beside me. His hands were out by his sides, and his legs were stretched out flat. His form was in the sun, while I was still in the shade. I spoke softly, hoping he wouldn't hear me, but I just had to say it. I don't tell you this, but I'm so grateful for you. I've never told you how beautiful you are, when you should hear it all the time. Not telling him, before, was a way to protect myself. I laid back down, the warmth of the sand beneath the towel enveloping me. The ambience of the island was dragging me under, and I hoped it wouldn't haul me all the way into the dream world Dylan wanted me to create with him. We weren't together. We weren't married, and nothing we did was going to change that. Well, unless, of course, we got married. Why would I think that? That wasn't an option. After a few minutes, Dylan turned his head to me, his eyes bleary from just waking up. Did you want to go to dinner tonight or stay in? We could order out if you'd rather stay in. Following an afternoon of watching him swim, I didn't know if I wanted to be inside with him for very long in such a romantic arena. There were emotions and longings that demanded to be met. Having dinner together would turn into watching a movie on the bed and getting comfortable. With the way I was feeling on that island, I may or may not try to kiss him. I didn't have a lot of self-control, and my lack of self-discipline was showing. We weren't going to be together. We weren't even going to entertain the idea of trying out the marriage thing. I'd already put my foot down. So why was his suggestion so appealing? I shook my head and rolled over on my side, yawning. Let's go out. I'm feeling like Italian or something. Does that sound good? Dylan's slow, sexy smile could have meant he'd read my mind and knew I was avoiding being alone with him anywhere private. I rented a bike. We can take it up the street to this little Italian place I wanted to try when I first got here. A bike? Like a motorcycle? Dylan was a safe guy. He didn't do motorcycles. If he did, when did he learn to ride and why didn't I know? Chapter 12. Dylan. Kayla stunned me with her confession while I lay there as if asleep. She was grateful for me, and she thought I was beautiful. I kept myself from wincing because it was everything I wanted to hear, except she loved me. How could she not see we were perfect for each other? I knew she was just avoiding getting hurt like when her father left her mom. It tore the two women apart and drove a wedge between Kayla and anyone else in the world. Hadn't I shown I was nothing like her dad in all the time we'd been together? Would I be just like him if I finally gave up and left? Still weak, Kayla accepted my help to the bathroom for a shower. She didn't mention that I'd changed her when she was sick, probably because I'd done it 100 times before, if not more. Before she even asked, I turned the water on and got it to her preferred temperature. Once she was behind the curtain, I handed her the toiletries from her bag, in the order she used them. When I'd handed everything that she would need to use to her, I stepped out into the bedroom and pulled out a dress for her to wear. She preferred dresses. She was the type of woman who would wear a dress grocery shopping because it made her feel feminine. Kayla was all kinds of feminine. She didn't try to pretend to be a tomboy or try to be anything but the woman she was, which was amazing since she did a lot of rough and tumble things, but always in a dress. She took me for granted as she stepped out of the shower and came in to get dressed. She knew I would lay one out for her. Again, more things I've done for her in the past. She hated picking out her own clothes. We walked side by side to the parking lot, and her eyes widened at the sight of the black and turquoise Harley I'd rented. I didn't want to waste my time on the island in the car when I wanted to feel the salty air whipping around me. I didn't know you rode. What other secrets are you keeping from me? She tossed me a coy smile. I swung my leg over the seat of the Harley. She perched behind me, side-mounted, with both legs hanging off to my left. Flinging her arms around my waist, she laughed. Hopefully, we're only going a block or two down. I don't have a helmet. The helmets were in one of the closets back in the condo. When we pulled into the parking lot at Rocky's, the restaurant, Kayla excused herself to use the restroom. I knew she was putting on lipstick. What she did every time we went out. I'd go to wash my hands when she got back. It's what we did. The waitress arrived and I ordered calamari and mozzarella sticks for Kayla, as well as a Mai Tai and a beer for me. I would have lasagna and salad, and Kayla would most likely eat some of mine. It's how we did it. She preferred appetizers. I preferred her. She finally took a seat across from me and smiled. Her face glowed. It is gorgeous here. Did you know that Kauai is the most northern island? At least that's accessible by tourists. I guess there's another one off the coast from here. Kayla was a collector of odd facts. Another thing I loved about her. As we fell into an easy conversation, I couldn't believe she couldn't see this. It was easy for us to be around each other. It was easy for us to have fun and be comfortable and just be around each other. It was so easy for me to love her. After we finished eating, I paid the check, and she climbed on my bike, obviously nervous as she fidgeted with her fingers at my waist. Her touch was distracting, and I was grateful for the short distance back. We got to the hotel, and I turned to her, gripping her waist to help her from the Harley. I studied her face and ducked mine to see her face better. What's the matter? You seem nervous. I know that we agreed we're just being friends on this trip, but there's only one bed. Were you serious when you said you'd sleep on the floor? She narrowed her eyes at me as if trying to make sure she didn't miss anything. I laughed, shaking my head. Number, I'm sleeping on the floor, unless... I laughed harder when she shook her head with her hands up. All right, so I'm sleeping on the floor. Did I catch a glimpse of disappointment as I hurriedly agreed? Or was that just me hoping again? Chapter 13. Kayla. We played at the beach until the moon reached high overhead. Finally, we couldn't wait anymore, and it was time to go inside to bed. He followed, grabbing a towel and wrapping it around his waist. I loved how in Hawaii I never got cold. Even when it rained, it was still warm. Not like in the Northwest when it looked sunny and beautiful, but was still frigid. Appearances could be deceiving. I climbed into bed, and Dylan, true to his word, put himself into the sleeping area he'd created for himself. Selfish. I was so selfish. I looked across the expanse of the king mattress and realized I was only on one side. What kind of a friend was I? Forcing him to sleep on the floor because I was suddenly nervous things might go somewhere. I didn't want them to go anywhere. I didn't want to give him a false impression. Why did I feel disappointed that he hadn't pushed it? I wasn't allowed to think with my hormones. That was something I decided a long time ago. Things were easy between us. I loved how comfortable we were around each other. But as soon as the idea came into my head that he might actually have expectations for me, I felt things become awkward. I hadn't changed in front of him like I usually would, and I hadn't wanted him to watch me brush my teeth or get ready for bed. In the past, it never really mattered because we were so comfortable with each other. I couldn't lose the easiness. I opened my mouth to tell him again that we would never work as a couple, but the steady pattern of his breathing in the silence of the room assured me he was asleep. He was comforting to have around. He was so steady. I needed steady. Nothing could ruin that. The next morning dawned bright and sunny as it always did in Hawaii. Dylan and I grabbed bagels and donuts from the continental breakfast buffet in the lobby. Let's go to the coconut marketplace today. You always wanted to get a toe ring. Dylan took a drink of his orange juice and then placed it on the table. I had always wanted to get a toe ring. They were different in Hawaii. They were sized to fit your toe, and they didn't come off. Other ones around the country were available as open rings that could be easily sized to fit anybody. The ones in Hawaii were the ones I always wanted. Luckily for me, Dylan remembered the smallest things. I smiled at his thoughtfulness. Okay, thank you. That sounds fun. We walked together toward the Coconut Marketplace, which was an open mall. The jewelry shop had a sign that said, "Closed for the holiday." I looked at Dylan and cocked my head to the side. Is it a holiday? I'm not sure. We'll have to ask. We turned back toward the condos and held an easy pace as we walked. He bent down and picked up a stray palm frond and tossed it to the side of the sidewalk. Is there anything else you want to do today? I shrugged. I was feeling a lot better, and I was interested in getting the trip underway. Are you feeling up for anything adventurous? We could check out the Nepali coast and go snorkeling, or we could go to the rope swing out by the cane fields. If you'd rather keep it more relaxed, we could walk around Princeville and get lunch up there, or we can go to Waimea Falls. Obviously, we have a ton we could do. Dylan turned and walked backwards with our slow pace. I laughed, reaching out and pushing against his shoulder. You sound like a tour guide. I'm fine with whatever. What do you want to do? We both enjoyed similar things. Whatever he picked that day, I wouldn't be disappointed. Let's just go to the Nepali coast. It'll be fun just to spend some time together. He looked at me with hooded eyes, and a tremor of anticipation shivered through me. If I pretended that he understood we were just friends, everything would be fine. Everything would be normal. If I acted like friends and kept everything the way it was always supposed to be, then he would pick up on my hints and wouldn't push this. Maybe I could convince myself of that, but did I have enough time before my defenses crumbled underneath his pressure? Chapter 14. Dylan. Do you think anything we did the last 3 days counts as something new? I panted behind Kayla as we pushed ourselves up yet another rise in the trail. Twisted tree stumps stuck up through the well-packed clay-like red dirt. Kayla tossed a glance over her rounded shoulder and smiled. You mean swimming, eating out, and generally just hanging out aren't new? She snorted, eliciting a laugh from me. Of course, none of it was new for us. We did that in Hayden. We were always together. Normally, this would be my idea of paradise. Well, maybe seeing that seal would count as a new experience. Or, hey, the stingray was pretty amazing. Ooh, yes. Those definitely count. She leaned against the rough bark of a nearby tree and squinted through the thick foliage on the ocean side of the trail. Too bad we don't have any pictures of those to add in, though. She pointed toward a larger opening in the leaves. Do you think that's a whale? I glanced away from her and studied where she pointed. After a moment, my eyes blurred from not blinking. I can't tell. Nudging me with her elbow in the ribs, she giggled. I told you, age will catch you. Laughter burst from me, and I reached an arm around her shoulders and pulled me close to her side. Oh my gosh, I love you. I said it so naturally because my shields were down and I'd slipped so easily into the act of being married. She froze beside me. I didn't give in or act like anything was out of the ordinary until her frigidity melted and she sank into my hold. She didn't reply, but her acceptance of the moment was a bigger win. While it was a victory, I was exhausted. I was overly attentive, overly complimentary, trying to be everything she would find perfect in a husband. I tried so hard to prove we belonged together. I think she noticed and was subconsciously pushing me away. My expression of affection came as second nature. Our days of fun were coaxing me into believing we had a chance. Even as great as those days were, they dragged out, extending my pain. We hadn't been different from how we were at home. Nothing was different. We were friends. 6 days had passed. I had 8 left to convince her to give us a shot. Hiking the Nepali coast had given us an appetite. The steep caverns and sloping trails mesmerized us as we climbed higher and farther. We'd snacked on granola bars somewhere deep in the jungle, and then we returned to the trailhead. As we got ready to leave, we watched a lot of people snorkeling in the northern bay. We packed our things into the saddlebag on the bike. Kayla had worn a pair of skorts, a skirt over shorts, that fit her toned legs like skin. I'd hiked behind her long enough to know I needed to cool down. We stopped in Princeville at a small burger place, and they sat us. I stood from my seat and jerked my thumb over my shoulder. I need to use the restroom. Would you order for me? I knew what Kayla liked, just like she knew what I wanted. In the bathroom, I used the facilities and washed my hands. Local decorations leaned toward extravagantly comfortable with coconut chandeliers and lei necklaces strung together on the walls like streamers. Koa Wood spotted the interior with various frames and other types of figurines they had on display. Soft Hawaiian music played overhead. The more I was on the island, the more I fell for the local island life. Walking down the hall from the bathroom, I accidentally bumped into a waitress who smiled at me with a tray filled with sodas. I nodded my head and walked around her. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I continued with a long stride down the hallway, ignoring her lingering touch on my arm as she said no problem. She was gorgeous with exotic coloring and come-love-me eyes, but I didn't look back. There was only one woman for me, and that woman was talking to another man. What the... As the table came into view, a man stood beside Kayla, a large smile across his dark-skinned face. With a hulking shape and tattoos all over his upper body and down his shoulders, he looked like a local. With Kayla's coloring, she could have been a local, but I didn't care. I didn't care about any of it. Why did she have to flirt with everybody? Why wouldn't she do more than flirt with me? She did nothing else, and I had so much to offer her. What if I rushed up beside them and told the man that she'd never let him get close enough to really know her, and that he would have to share her with me? My jealousy came into play, and even when I normally wouldn't acknowledge it, my fatigue and discouragement allowed it to come through. Do you work here? Is there a reason you're standing at my table, talking to my date? With an affable smile, the man held his hands at chest level and backed away. Apologies, bro. I yanked my chair out from the table and slumped into the seat. I leaned back, taking my fork in my hand and thumping it on the table. I didn't need to look at Kayla to see her confusion or mounting disgust. What was that? Her pointed question drew my attention, and I finally focused my gaze on her. I'm not even gone 10 minutes and the vultures descend. I was being honest, and I was honestly sick and tired of walking on eggshells around her. We were real. As friends, I could be honest with her. Even if she thought I was joking, I at least always told the truth. Maybe that's part of what was bugging me. She hadn't seen my efforts for what they were, or she had seen them, and she had just been in denial. Either way, I was done, and I couldn't keep pretending I wasn't so hardcore in love with her. It choked me. We aren't together, Dylan. You can't be mad at me for a man stopping and talking to me, or for me talking to him for that matter. I don't get mad at you for the women who talk to you. She pressed her lips together and glared at me. And as sure as I was trying, I could feel her pulling away from me. I reached across the table and pulled her hand into mine. Kayla, I want to try. Why was I always begging her? She shook her head, avoiding my gaze and trying to pull her hand from mine. No. I wouldn't let her go, clinging to any point of contact that I could maintain. Why? Let's try it. I'll make you a deal. If it doesn't work out, we'll pretend it never happened. If it works out, who knows how amazing it could be. Please. Give it a few days? She finally escaped my grasp and leaned back, folding her arms across her chest. We only have a few days left. If I give you any more days, we'll end up home, and our chance will have passed us by. Kayla, we'll slip into our old routine. We may or may not be matched to someone else on that site, or maybe we'll meet someone else. Please, before we lose this time, let's just try. We were matched. Come on, are you even having fun with me? Let's try it. I was working too hard and I could feel it, but my desperation demanded that I give everything I had. I couldn't go back to where we were. That trap that I'd been in for the last 16 years was too painful for me. Please. I sought her gaze with mine. Her eyes widened of their own accord. What do you mean? Try how? I don't know what else we could be doing to have more of a vacation together. But she knew. She just wanted me to spell it out for her. I had no problem doing that. Some things I'd wanted to say to her for the longest time. Let's be married. Let's really be on our honeymoon. There, I said it. I threw the option out there. And now it was left to the fates of the Hawaiian Islands to pull us together. Everything. A complete honeymoon. Fear raised her voice to a higher level, and she swallowed. My heart hurt that the idea of being married to me, being intimate with me, scared her. I plowed forward anyway because that was it. That was my last chance to really make a go of it. 100%. Let's be married. Let's have the honeymoon we were supposed to come down here to have. It was probably going to be the closest I would be able to have to a proposal until she saw how perfect we would be together. She studied me, and I never felt more insecure. Kayla leaned forward, chewing the side of her lip and looking all around the restaurant. Why can't you be happy with how... The waitress stood at our table, eyebrows raised and 2 plates in her hands. Chicken teriyaki burger and the jalapeno aloha burger. We sat back, nodding and smiling politely. Kayla focused on her food, sipping her drink and dipping a fry in a small cup of fry sauce. We both relished the escape from the topic. I didn't want to give her the chance to turn me down, and she probably didn't want me to push it further. Chapter 15. Kayla. Dylan was a persistent butt. I agreed with his proposal just to get him to back off. Plus, the way he looked at me with his dark, soulful expression, he was going to pull from me a declaration of love that I didn't want to hold him to. So what if I loved him? So what if he was more important to me than anyone else in the world? It wasn't enough to put everything on the line. The only thing that helped me agree was his promise that everything would be back to normal, if it didn't work out. With me, though, it wasn't if. It was when things didn't work out. I shouldn't agree to a few romantic days on the island with my best friend. I needed the romance, too. If we could promise to go back to normal afterwards, then I would be able to have the best of both worlds, like a friends with benefits kind of situation. My mom had asked me if Dylan and I were that way a while back. I'd laughed because the idea was intriguing, even though I never pursued it. The fact that I found the idea intriguing, and the fact that it loomed in front of me as we stood in front of the hotel doors, didn't make anything any easier. I spun to Dylan and grabbed his arm. My fingers tightened and I yanked to get his attention. Let's go for a swim. I'm still full after dinner. We had already had a full day of hiking and being out. But I couldn't go into that room alone with him at night, with the idea of going to bed ahead of us. Not yet. As delicious as he was, I wasn't ready for that level yet. With all of his experience and my less than the amount of experience, I could only imagine how I would fall short. A dark room, mixed with our agreement, didn't bode well for my nerves. Dylan's all-knowing grin spread his lickable lips, but he agreed and even went into the bathroom to change and give me my own privacy. He was tender and sweet, and I was stupid for fighting my draw to him. How long would it take for him to break through my defenses there on that island with promises riding on the air? Not long. How long would it take for me to push him away once we hit physical intimacy? Not long. Unfortunately, we were doomed, and I really hoped we would be able to resume our lives when we returned to reality. Deep down in the pit of my stomach, in the very corners of my soul, I knew nothing would ever be the way they were before I got on that plane. But if I was good at one thing, it was denial. We found our way to the water. I pushed myself further from the shore to keep a little bit more distance between him and I. Hiding under the water was every woman's self-defense mechanism when we wore skimpy clothes, swimming. My walls slowly deteriorated and I couldn't have him close. If he touched me in the warm water, with the sand beneath my toes and the salt flavoring the smooth parts of his skin, I doubted my control would be present. I wouldn't be able to stay off him, and I would have more to curse than the small amount of alcohol I'd consumed in Princeville. We had agreed to a full honeymoon. I was anxious and also a little excited. I wanted to be appealing to him, but just recently he'd seen me throwing up. How appealing could I be? So, are you excited to finally be married? Dylan pulled the topic out into the forefront. He wasn't one to let things be unspoken. I usually liked that about him. This time, though, I was under the microscope, and I didn't like being inspected. Given who asked, though, I considered his question and gave him a serious answer. He deserved that from me. Yeah, I am actually. This island needs romance. But that didn't mean I was going to close the distance between us. I moved my hands around me as if I tread water, but I was still standing and my chest was above the surface. Soft waves moved me in the water, and I wiggled my feet deeper in the silky sand. Dylan ducked under the water, the setting sun reflecting on the dancing top surface, keeping him from view. Where was he? Where had he gone? He liked his games, but we were playing in the ocean, and the danger of riptides was real. Suddenly, he tugged on my leg until I sank below the surface. Still able to touch, I thrust myself up from the bottom and came up spluttering and slapping at the water around me. He returned to his position a few feet away, laughing and wiping his face. A swath of hair dripped water down the side of his face, and I wanted to trace the water's route with my finger. You're such a butt. I couldn't stop laughing, rolling my eyes and throwing my now wet hair into a loose braid. He closed the space between us in seconds and caught me in his arms. Dylan had broken down my discomfort and returned me to a state of contentment again. I ignored that we were supposed to be intimate together and just reveled in the feeling of being in Dylan's arms. We were friends. Best friends. The tingling in my skin was normal. Fluttering in my stomach was acceptable, considering how handsome he was, and how much he made me aware of myself and him. I studied his face, my arms around his neck. We weren't more than a few inches away from each other. I spoke quietly, with a hushed reverence for the moment. How do you know exactly what I need to feel better about things? It was an honest question that came in the honest moment. I'm the perfect husband. He winked and pushed my newly braided hair off my shoulder. His hand lingered, the heat of his palm confusing but not unwelcome. I arched my eyebrow at him and slid him a grin. You are, huh? What makes you perfect? I could play his game. A little bit of flirting never hurt anybody, especially with how he was playing me. I know the best things about you and the worst things, and I still care. He held my gaze until he bent his head low enough to kiss my shoulder. His lips were hot, and I got goosebumps that spread from the spot where he touched me. He pulled back as I tried to catch my breath. He leaned forward, and our lips were inches apart. A burning pain ripped through the back of my calf. I jerked away from Dylan and screamed. That was all I could do. I caught my breath and whimpered as the pain throbbed deep in my skin. Dylan didn't wait and lifted me up into his arms, running and pushing as fast as he could to get to the beach. On the sand, he laid me down on the towel, face down, and he examined my calf. The cool gentleness of his touch didn't soothe the angry sting in my skin. I couldn't help myself. I gave in and cried. The pain was so intense it shot down to my foot and up the back of my leg. My leg began to spasm, and I sensed a massive Charlie horse moments away. Dylan's voice cut through my tears. I think you were stung by a Portuguese man of war. Alarmed, I tossed a glance over my shoulder at him. I saw that Friends episode. Great! Just when I was willing to pursue something with him, we had to pee on each other. Do you have to pee on it to make it feel better? I was not peeing on my leg, and I didn't want Dylan to urinate on me either. Getting stung wasn't good. The Portuguese man of war was not a good omen for our marriage decision. I was clutching at anything to try to back out of our arrangement, and I knew it. We had almost kissed, and all of my insecurities from college rushed back over me. I'm not peeing on you. Dylan flipped me over, wrapped me in a towel, and lifted me in his arms again. He carried me swiftly to the back of the restaurant sitting beside our hotel. He knocked on the back door until someone came. Do you guys have any vinegar? She was stung by a man of war. The urgency in his voice compelled the restaurant worker to open the door further. He looked at my leg peeking from beneath the towel and shook his head. Actually, the best thing for that is more ocean water. Let me help you. Did you get the stingers out? He searched Dylan's face, ignoring me as if I wasn't there. Dylan shook his head, holding me steady. The man disappeared, and I worried he was leaving us there without helping us. I struggled not to give in to the waves of pain as they rushed in and out like 1,000 bee stings. When the worker returned, he had a flat plastic knife which he scraped carefully across the back of my leg. There was nominal relief when he pulled out the tiniest barbs, but the stinging was still present. He wiped the residue from the knife on a napkin, and he studied my calf. I think I got them all. Get her back to the beach and rinse that with water. The salt water is better than vinegar or urine. Don't use fresh water. It will make it worse. Our good Samaritan nodded tightly at Dylan, and as he ducked back inside, we could hear him calling to someone else. Just tourists trying to reenact that dumb Friends episode. Dylan rushed me back to the water's edge, careful not to put me back into the water. I'd started shaking. He scooped warm ocean water onto my calf with his hands. The wound soon began to throb less and less until it was just a dull ache. The instant ebbing of pain released me, and fatigue came in to replace it. I was so tired. My relief tried to take me under into sleep. I leaned against Dylan's strength, stretching to get closer to the delicious smell of his cologne and the ocean. Dylan carried me carefully back to the hotel. My arm wrapped around his neck, and I winced. I guess our wedding night is out. I softly chuckled to take away the rejection in my words, but Dylan looked as pained as I felt. Chapter 16. Dylan. Worry over Kayla amped up my adrenaline. Her scream had been blood-curdling, and I wished I had been stung and not her. I carried her carefully back to the condo. Do you want to take a bath? Or would you rather just go to bed? I set her gingerly on her good leg while I unlocked the door and let us in. After I got inside, I looked up man of war stings on my phone. The information I found said she'd be in pain for a few hours, but as long as there wasn't any swelling or difficulty breathing, she'd probably be fine. Fresh water was bad as long as the stingers or barbs were still in there, but the man had gotten them out. She needed to relax, and a bath was the best place to put her. She'd gotten rather quiet since the water, and I was worried she might be having problems with an allergic reaction. A bath sounds nice. She spoke softly and held onto my arm to steady herself. I opened the bathroom door and helped her limp into the bathroom. Running a warm bath, I turned so she could get into the bathtub with some privacy. After she settled in and drew the curtain up to cover her body from the neck down, I turned and knelt on the ground beside the tub. Kneeling beside her, I wrung out the washcloth and handed it to her. where I was still wasn't comfortable, so shifted to sitting on my rear end with my back to the tub, my forearms resting on my knees. I leaned my head back and stared at the light reflecting in the mirror. That was one way to end the evening. She reached over, taking a chunk of my hair in her fingers and twisting it. She spoke softly, as if she wasn't sure she wanted to speak. Her touch was intoxicating, but she was injured, and I wasn't going to force the issue we'd agreed on earlier. Why are you pushing us? You never did this at home. My head was still angled back, but I tilted it so I could see her face. Because I believe in us. We're too good together to throw away. The moment was raw and deserved nothing less than brutal honesty. Why would we have to throw us away? She lifted her head to look at me more fully. She presented my chance to me as if on a silver platter, the opportunity to really make a statement and try to get through to her. Because I'm in love with you and all your quirks and your generosity and everything. It hurts. I've always felt this way. You don't see me. Not the me that I am. Not the man that I am. I do see you. You're amazing. You're better than any guy I've ever met. You're the one I compare all my dates to. Every man falls short compared to you. She was vehement. I was the one she compared them to? Then why not give me a real chance? Give us a chance. She shook her head sadly, releasing my hair and dropping her hand back into the bathwater. She looked up toward the ceiling, tears in her voice. I told you. I shook my head in return and held up my hand as I pushed away from the tub. Number, I've heard it. I've never left you. 16 years. It's been 16 years, and I've never left. She reached up to me, grabbing my hand and pulling me back down to my knees. She leaned over the bath so her chest was against the tub. She reached up, putting her hand behind my neck and pulling me down. Our lips touched, gently at first, and then harder as if we were starved for contact. After a long moment, we disconnected, her breath hitching and panting. Her luminescent blue gaze snagged mine. We were just inches away from each other. My leg is fine. Don't sleep on the floor tonight. Chapter 17. Kayla. I woke with a yawn, enjoying the nest of blankets and the warmth of Dylan's arms wrapped around my waist. My naked waist. My eyes snapped open, and I stared at the sunlit curtains which were drawn across the sliders the night before. I was comfortable in Dylan's arms, like I always was. I was also worried that he was going to wake up before I could get up to brush my hair, brush my teeth, and try to look gorgeous for him. Normally, I didn't care what I looked like around Dylan. He got me as I was. After the night we spent together, I was worried we would never be comfortable around each other again. Not au natural, like normal. How was I going to do this? Would I move his arm and roll out from under it? Would I slowly creep out from under his hand and let his arm fall down to the mattress once I'd snuck away? Would I hold it up while I slid out from under the sheets and the weight of his arm? The logistics were dizzying, and before I could come up with a solid plan, he stirred. I searched what I could see of the room and panicked. What was I going to do? Holy cow, what had I done? With only one, I had ruined everything there was between us. What had I done? What had I done? It became a mantra in my mind, clipping each syllable with the beat of my heart. Dylan stretched his legs and pulled me closer to him. Our naked skin brushed up against each other, and I went frigid. Of course I did. How weird for me. There was a noticeable ache in my calf, but that wasn't why I wasn't comfortable. He lifted his head, his eyes kind of scrunchy from sleep. He smiled slow and sweet and leaned down, kissing my forehead with a lingering touch. Good morning. Forgive me that I don't kiss you right on the lips. I'm sure I have horrendous morning breath. And dang it if Dylan didn't have me right back in my comfortable spot. I laughed, careful to direct my breath elsewhere. I was just wondering how I was going to sneak out of here to make myself all pretty. You can't get any prettier than you are. He laid back down on the pillow, drawing me close, but in a way that he wasn't breathing in my face. Things were so natural with him. Was that what I'd been missing for so long? I didn't want to go into the adventure the night before. He'd been beyond gentle and careful of my leg, and I'd felt cherished. I couldn't remember the last time I'd been anyone's 1000% focus. Dylan hadn't let me rethink anything the night before, and if he had his way, I wouldn't have a chance to rethink anything. He caressed my bare shoulder. He didn't make me feel naive or inexperienced. He made me feel loved. We reached the zip line adventure shortly after lunch. I don't remember a part where we weren't holding hands or Dylan didn't have his arm over my shoulder. The constant public displays of affection would have been annoying coming from anyone else, but with Dylan, they were natural. I welcomed them, which said a lot for me. I think he knew it. Our guide mentioned the demigod Maui, and something about skimming above a valley with where the firebird lived. I couldn't keep my gaze from finding Dylan. We harnessed up, Dylan double-checking the tour guide's job on my own harness. He kissed my forehead. I can't let you slip out and lose you when I just got you. His murmur reached my ears and warmed me from the inside out. Skimming over valleys plush with green and waterfalls, I spun myself on the line. I wasn't the biggest fan of heights, but I loved the thrill of being there in the moment. Extreme rides were like first kisses. You weren't sure when it was going to end, or how it would start, or even how it would work, but it took your breath away just the same. 8 lines, and 2.5 hours later, I landed on the platform behind Dylan, breathless. I couldn't stop laughing. Judging by the expression on Dylan's face, he was just as affected as I was. We pulled off our helmets and slipped out of the harnesses. These are really nice. Look at the quality in the stitching. I couldn't stop inspecting everything. I'd almost missed the excitement when I stepped off the platform of the line with the 200-foot drop into the steep valley. The speed had picked up, but I'd been so focused on the line itself, the cable, and the yank at my waist. I couldn't breathe, and I loved it. I wanted that ride at Big Dog. Dylan's excitement was boundless. I didn't think it would be hard to convince him to add one of our own. His next words confirmed it. Ours wouldn't be this long, but we could do one at Big Dog. It could be our new feature. In the next year or two, we can expand it. Could you imagine doing one of these in the middle of winter? His excitement was contagious, and I stared at him, leaning up to kiss him on the lips as the next group landed shortly behind us. One of the girls who landed in the back of the group was crying. Dylan looked around and approached her while the worker was busy. "Are you okay?" I tried not to notice her adorable blonde curls or the dainty pout to her lower lip. She was smaller than me, and she didn't look as solid. Her friends could have been imitations of her. Her large, liquid green eyes zoned in on Dylan, and she shook her head. Tugging at the harness in various places as if she was trying to get out of it, the woman's sobs subsided enough she could talk. Number, I didn't want to do that. I'm claustrophobic and I'm afraid of heights. I need out of this now. Her hysteria mounted, and people from the rest of the group looked at her. Dylan nodded his head and reached forward to help her unbuckle and get the suit off. He moved with quick, deft movements. One thing Dylan knew was his job: customers. They paid the bill, and he knew customer service. Like, he knew how to breathe. I looked around to make sure he wouldn't get in trouble. At our own amusement park, we had strict guidelines on who was allowed to help who. But the worker was overwhelmed, and it seemed he was waiting for someone to help him, so I didn't say anything as Dylan continued helping the woman remove her gear. After they removed their own outfits, the woman's friends gathered around Dylan. They gushed about, calling him a hero, and even mini-clapping in sync. Dylan stood there with her harness in his hands and smiled, speaking nicely to them. My jaw dropped, and I stood off to the side, taking in the display. If I acknowledged my feelings of jealousy, I would probably run into the group and start scratching the women's eyes out. Even though it wasn't real, Dylan was my husband. For the next few days, I didn't like the feeling that my husband might already regret being with me. I needed a couple days before I was ready for that. What if I held him back from doing something with those women? What if I was holding him back from really enjoying his vacation? What if Dylan regretted being with me already? I was so far from regret, it almost hurt. I didn't like the feelings I got when Dylan and I were just friends in the form of jealousy. They didn't mean as much then. Now that I'd had a taste of what it was like to be with him, to be romantically involved and wrapped up as his focus of attention, my discomfort was taking over new territory. Jealousy had taken on a whole new feel. Was that going to be the cost of me finding happiness in his arms? Chapter 18. Dylan. I'm not stupid. Something was bugging Kayla. I couldn't put my finger on what it was, but I pushed it away. For the first time, I didn't care. I didn't have very many days left with her, and I was going to revel in the romance. I was taking advantage of the fact that I could kiss her, and hug her, and touch her as much as I wanted. She didn't push me away. She didn't act like it was too much, or like I was smothering her. The entire situation was like a dream come true. I just ignored the fact that sometimes I caught her staring off into space with an expression riddled with worry. When we went back to the beach that night, I kissed her before going into the water. After her tangle with the man of war, she said she'd rather not go in the water on that particular beach. I didn't venture far myself. I just wanted to watch the sunset and enjoy the warm water on my skin. We spent the night in each other's arms. Up the Nepali coast, we explored the blue and green caves, hiking into the dark interiors with our hands clutching each other the whole way. With the blue waters reflecting in her eyes, she'd reminded me of a siren I'd read about in a book once. Kayla was captivating, and I was enchanted. Riding on the bike everywhere, she held me with her face pressed against my shoulder blades. I could feel the warmth of her breath on my neck when she spoke, almost having to yell as we zoomed along the highways. The days ran into each other, picking up speed with each passing second. I felt like I was on one of our most successful thrill rides at the park. I didn't want to get off, but I knew the ride had to end soon. She hadn't chosen, and I wasn't ready to face that just yet. Let's go to Coconut Marketplace and get you that toe ring now. The lady at the desk said they're open again. I grabbed her hand and pulled her from another one of her books. She loved reading as much as I loved watching her. She put the book down smiling and walked beside me as we swung our joined hands between us. Giggling, she passed me my phone she'd grabbed for me off the nightstand. Don't forget to snap another picture of us doing this. That poor app must be exhausted with all of the pictures you keep sending it. I rolled my eyes and tucked my phone into my back pocket. You have no idea. I figure the more pictures I send, the less it will nag me. I'm not sure how many tasks I've covered, but if they say we didn't do enough, I'll have a backlog of evidence that we did almost too much. I grinned, pulling her against my side and kissing her forehead. The app had worn me out with the dings and reminders. Since Kayla agreed to try things out with a serious effort, I'd inundated the app with pictures at every possible moment. I hadn't heard it ding once since. That was a relief in and of itself. The little jewelry store was quaint. When we arrived, the woman, whose name tag read Natalia, sat Kayla in a chair, sizing her for her ring. She noticed the red marks on Kayla's calf, which wrapped around the sides, and looked up, startled. Man of war attack? Natalia gently turned Kayla's foot to the side and inspected the wound. Kayla nodded jerkily. The back of her leg still hurt, and we had taken to putting on a salve that we found at a market. I bugged her to keep sunblock on, too. The woman's fair skin didn't take kindly to the sun, and I didn't want her in more pain. I already felt awful that she'd gotten stung instead of me. Please, tell me you didn't pee on it. The woman looked between the two of us with a schoolteacher expression of rebuke. I shook my head fervently. No, the man at the restaurant told us to use ocean water. She took Kayla's foot in her hands and maneuvered a small silver band to the tip of her index toe and twisted the ring on. Inspecting her work, she nodded her approval, both at the ring and our chosen method of care for the stings. That's good. We get a lot of people down here who think that it's sanitary or going to help things from some sitcom that aired years ago. But it doesn't work, and fresh water just makes it worse. She picked up her tray and slid Kayla's sandal back on. Why don't you look around while I ring this up? You can see if there's anything else you would like to take with you. She smiled and went behind the counter. I really want to check those watches out over there. I had a watch fetish, and the possible presence of a Nahoku inlay timepiece pulled me to the woman's watch display. The koa wood and quartz settings could make me drool, and I decided I needed one. All right, I'd decided before I even got to the island that I would find me one. A Nahoku piece would round out my collection. It wouldn't complete it, of course. I'm not sure that was possible. Shaking her head, Kayla smiled. Don't forget the time. She winked and wandered over to the ring section. Her standing joke whenever I found watches to look at brought out a grin. I studied her for a moment, her profile softened by the glowing lights of the display case. Her dark hair fell behind her silhouette and gave her a more porcelain appearance. She was beautiful, and I couldn't stand it sometimes. The shop owner approached me as I finally diverted my attention to the display. I pointed out a watch that I wanted to look at, and I murmured under my breath, "Would you please note which ring she likes the most? I'll add it to my purchase, maybe even note the size and adjust it to fit her for me." I lifted my gaze over the watch as if we spoke about its features. I was going to buy the expensive item, and if she did as I asked, she'd be filling her register early. The woman's eyes brightened and she nodded discreetly. Natalia finished with my watch and placed it into a carved wooden box and placed it beside the register. She then moved on to talk Kayla into trying on the ring she continued staring at. I ambled to where she stood and peeked over her shoulder to find a finely crafted two-tone gold hibiscus flower with a diamond and ruby finish. The ring was exactly Kayla. If I had tried to come up with a ring myself, it could not fit her any better. The owner glanced at me, seeking my approval. I nodded emphatically from behind Kayla's back. The woman touched the ring on Kayla's hand. "This is a Denny Wong original. You carry a piece of Hawaii with you when you wear it." Kayla offered it back to her with a smile of regret. "It's exceptional. I wish I could justify the expense. Maybe not at this time, but thank you for letting me try it on." I grinned as the woman charged me and picked up my purchases. Kayla had wandered over to the side of another shop with a sign that read, "Authentic Hawaiian Shave Ice." I couldn't wait to give her the ring. I just hoped she realized that we were meant for each other, and she chose to really marry me after it was all said and done and we returned home. The next 2 days passed in a blur as we visited the rope swing up through the cane fields and made a trip out to Waimea Falls. I'm not sure what I loved more about Kayla, her willingness to try anything or her strength in understanding her weaknesses. She didn't flinch at the top of the falls as we looked out over the splendor, but at the rope swings, she was a little nervous about swinging out into the grotto when she couldn't see the bottom. The freshwater swim was what we needed. Salt water was fine and all, but splashing into fresh river water was like swimming at home. I caught a glimpse of how we could be in our normal lives, and my heart ached for everything to work out. Our next adventure shook me, and I was almost ready to run back to our lives before we even finished the vacation. While we ran an amusement park, we were limited in the number of stupid mistakes we would make. In Princeville, we hiked down to Queen's Bath, off the North Shore. The waterfall we passed brought light to Kayla's face, and I couldn't wait to give her the ring. She loved all things from nature, and I wanted to put one on her finger that reminded her of us and my love for her, and the start of our future. Multiple rocky promontories made it difficult to tell which inlet was the Queen's Bath. We went for the most eastern one and tucked our stuff into a crevice of some rocks to protect the items like our phones from the sun. Pulling on flippers and snorkels, we made our way to the edge and, eyes wide, counted together before jumping in. The water ebbed and flowed, pushing us up against the rocks and then allowing us to pull away. We kicked and splashed and made our way into the round pool in the side of the lava rocks, formed like a bowl. I held on to the side of the rock as Kayla mimicked me. Looking around the pool, I pulled the mouthpiece of the snorkel from my lips and called above the crashing waves as they echoed through the pitted rock. I thought it would be bigger. Didn't the guidebook say it was the size of a large swimming pool? I wasn't trying to yell, but the waves were beginning to get louder and they echoed off of the rocks all around us. Kayla nodded, adjusting her snorkel and shading her eyes as she looked up toward the sun. "It looks like it's getting to be kind of late. We need to put more sunblock on." Kayla worried about her skin more than most people worried about their seatbelts. I nodded. Of course we would go in. Kayla was worried, and that was enough for me. I offered her my cupped hands, and she placed the heel of her flipper into the support. She climbed out of the pool and waited for me at the top, reaching for my hand to help me the final bit from the hole. Pulling the snorkel off her face, Kayla pointed at a woman rushing toward us, alarm on her face. Are you guys okay? Is there anyone else down there? The woman reached us, grabbing onto each of our biceps. She searched the area, looking for more people. Concerned, I looked into the inlet as well, and then around at the surrounding waters. It's just us. Are you looking for someone? Can we help? The woman's frantic movements brought out the protector in me, and I worried someone might try to harm Kayla. I edged closer to her, trying to make sure that nothing would harm her. The woman shook her head, releasing Kayla's arm. She bent over, panting. Another group of people followed her out, young men and a few young women. She stood, trying to catch her breath. This isn't Queen's Bath. This is the inlet that they say you never should swim in. They call it the washing machine. It usually doesn't let people out. There have been a lot of deaths up here. You shouldn't be in there. I glanced around to see what Kayla thought of the revelation, to find her talking to a group of men. They were looking at her appraisingly, as if they knew her worth. She bent down and pulled her things from the hole we had stuffed them in. The men looked at her rear as she did so, and hot, raging jealousy ripped through me. I held it in. Who wouldn't look at Kayla? She was gorgeous. She stood and said something which they laughed at. When they replied and she laughed again, I wanted to throw up. I knew it was harmless, but my dreams are too close to be flippant. According to the woman, we almost died. I had almost lost Kayla from circumstances that would have been completely in my control. We could have looked more closely at the map we'd found of the beach. I should have double-checked to make sure we knew what we were getting into. I'd been cocky and taken things at face value. Losing Kayla wasn't an option. If anything had happened, I would only have myself to blame. Would I always wonder if Kayla was going to be happy with me? Or if she would even choose me? I would have to be more careful. I wanted to keep her alive so she could choose. Did she understand how serious the situation had been? It was hard for me to comprehend, and I was speaking with the woman and witnessing her anxiety over the event. I couldn't let on how worried I was, discovering the dangers we'd faced. I was glad we were safe, but things could have turned out much differently. I needed to think more, and I wasn't sure how I could meet Kayla's desire for spontaneous while I was trying to keep her alive. Chapter 19. Kayla. Dylan didn't say much as we hiked back up to the bike. I still couldn't believe that we were on one of the most dangerous beaches in Hawaii. It didn't seem like it, as we had just enjoyed being with each other. We changed at the condos, and Dylan still didn't talk a whole lot. I couldn't read his mind with the new twists in our relationship. I wasn't sure what anything meant anymore. There was a modicum of predictability before we'd gotten to the island, and I was more out of my element than I'd originally thought I would be. I felt like our situation had put us in a new type of relationship, and I wasn't sure I was comfortable with the new boundary changes. The app beeped. Oh, wow. I think you've spoiled the app. You must not have posted anything in the last couple hours. I laughed and looked at the list of tasks we still had to do. We were supposed to try something new together, which I was pretty sure we'd already submitted multiple pictures of proof. We hadn't taken any selfies or logged in at the Queen's Bath, which would probably qualify as not dying. A new one for each of us. We could try a new restaurant. Dylan and I both loved eating. How about we try that restaurant we passed here in Kapa'a? I couldn't get many words out of Dylan, and I wasn't sure what I had done, because of course it had to be me. Dylan was affable with everyone he met, except me. He'd even been pleasant to the maid we'd encountered in the hall. That's fine. I'm going to change. Dylan ducked into the bathroom. I slumped onto the edge of the bed. What was going on? What was I doing? I closed the app and winced at the calendar that showed up on my phone homepage. 2 days. I only had 2 days left, and then I was going home. Would I be going home as Mrs. Drake? Or would I be going home with a memorable vacation behind me and a cold friendship ahead of me? I needed a break from the hard-to-resist romance Dylan filled my days and nights with. I needed a little bit of time to decide what I wanted to do. Of course, staying with Dylan was ideal. Hadn't we proven over the last few days how perfect we were for each other? We hadn't even fought. Even though Dylan was kind of cranky acting, he had to be tired after taking care of me and doing all the crazy activities we'd been up to. Plus, I had just gotten over the flu, maybe he was getting it. I don't even know where I got it from. His getting sick would make sense since he'd been locked with me in the condo for the time I was sick. Googling restaurants, I called to Dylan through the door. Let's go to Hukalau Lanai's and get the candied ahi and BBQ ribs. We have to do something none of us have done before. We're almost done with these tasks. Did you know you've logged almost all of the tasks? This one just says an activity can't count for more than one task. So, we can go to Hukilau's for our first time. He opened the door, dressed in a clean pair of board shorts and a dark green shirt, which set off his eyes. Dylan nodded, straining his shoulders and forcing a smile. Sounds good. Was I that hard to be around? What had happened? It's close enough, we can just walk, I suggested with a smile, but I could tell it was as forced as his. When we arrived, I ordered the appetizers I'd recommended as well as the Hukalau mixed grill, which came with 3 island grilled fresh fish and some fun sides from the chefs. Dylan disappeared to the front of the restaurant. He couldn't have gone to the restroom since a discreet sign at the back of the restaurant located them in the rear. I rested my elbow on the edge of my table and looked out the window at the crashing waves, just beyond the green landscape. We were just down the beach from our hotel. Our walk had only taken us 3 minutes. I sipped on the ice water our waitress brought us and glanced around the quiet restaurant. We were a little early for the entertainment advertised at the front door. Thursday nights probably weren't extremely busy before 6. A man walked by, glancing at my table and then at me. He slowed and pointed at the seat across from me, which was still empty, making me feel a little self-conscious. Is it just you? Where was Dylan? I shook my head softly with a slight smile. My husband is in the restroom. The term didn't feel foreign coming off my tongue, which frightened me more than if it had. Maybe while Dylan was gone, I should take a few minutes and figure out which way I was going to go with my decision. He nodded, smiling. Holding out a hand with a large wedding ring on it, he smiled again. My wife often leaves me to go to the restroom at meals, too. She says clean hands make for more delicious food. I am Rico, and I own this humble place. Did you order any pupus? I'm sorry, appetizers? He spun the chair around and took a seat beside me, smiling as we talked. Rico was pleasant, and he spoke often of his wife. The minutes crawled past, and for the first time in a while, irritation welled inside me at Dylan's desertion. Where had he gone? Why wasn't he the one I laughed with and spoke with? What was out front? He wasn't in the bathroom. I was tempted to get up and go find him. I laughed at something Rico said, and suddenly Dylan was there, his hands clenched and his shoulders bunched up. He snarled at Rico, who made his excuses and shot me a glance of apology before disappearing. Dylan took me by the hand and pulled me outside. I followed, unclear what was going on. Startled, I yanked him to a stop on the edge of the parking lot where the blacktop met the green grass. Jerking a thumb over my shoulder toward the restaurant, I thrust my chin to the side. That was rude. What are you doing? I was talking to him. Stop flirting with everyone. He said it through clenched teeth and tight lips. Dylan's gaze bore into mine. I'm not. He's married. He owns the restaurant. He wanted to talk to someone since they were so slow, and he saw I was all alone. For quite a while. Have you been drinking? Why were you gone so long? I crossed my arms and stepped back. Where had my Dylan gone? The man in front of me was acting so weird. He hadn't been normal since the Queen's bath. Maybe the potential danger of the situation was getting to him. Dylan closed his eyes and shook his head, rubbing the bridge of his nose. He sighed, pacing in front of me while I watched. He finally stopped walking and looked at me with tormented eyes. I'm sorry. I went to get you this. He thrust a silver-embossed black jewelry box into my hand and shook his head. Backing up, he searched the area for something. Maybe an escape? What is this? I stood with a hand on my hip and the box held at arm's length as if it might bite me. I hadn't made up my mind yet, and there he was already deciding for me, if in fact it was what it looked like. Thankfully, he didn't drop to one knee. Dylan watched me closely with an air of stillness about him, as if he suspected I would act exactly like I was acting. Did he know my doubts? Could he read in me the fear of going further with him? He spoke quietly, like he didn't want to spook me. His eyes flickered as he searched my face, and then fell to the box I still hadn't opened or allowed too close to my body. He set his jaw. I was worried. I had some things to get through about this afternoon, but I decided to shove them aside. I went to get your gift and I came back, excited, only to find you with that man. I ignored his obvious attempt to accuse me of something I wasn't ready to be accused of. Why would you be worried? Because I was worried you wouldn't be there. He thrust a finger at the ground. I'm worried that you're going to leave. You take it for granted that I'm always here, but I never take any of the time you're with me for granted. I know you're a flight risk. I did. I did take him for granted, but only because I knew I would always keep him close. He was the only thing I needed in the world, and he was worried I wouldn't be there. Even if the romance wasn't permanent, our friendship was. I thought he knew that. I thought he understood the circumstances of our relationship. He'd never spoken to me like that before. I pointed it out quietly. You've never spoken like that to me. I didn't know you felt that way. How long had he felt like that? Since we'd started the whole stupid journey, or longer? I've never had the right. I've never had the right to tell you how I feel and expect more from you than just treating me like one of your girlfriends. He lifted his chin, and I saw him for the proud man he was. Where had I gone wrong? At what point was I abusing our relationship? I suddenly felt like such a horrible person and friend. But none of that defended or explained where he felt he was justified in treating me the way that he had. Number? You don't have that right. You've never had that right. And you never will. I don't treat you like one of my girlfriends. I treat you like Dylan. Nothing has changed. I didn't know what to do with the box, so I dropped the hand to my side, where it hung limply. Deflated, Dylan's shoulders slumped and he half turned from me. He lifted his head and looked at me from the side. So, none of this has been real? What was he asking? Was he demanding an answer right then? Because I didn't have one. I couldn't tell him yes and give him everything only to take it away later. Once I committed to marriage, it would be forever. And I wasn't absolutely sure Dylan and I were perfect for each other. Besides the perfection of the last few days in a place where everything was already perfect. Plus, I didn't like how jealous he was. We didn't do jealous, and if I always had to curb it, why didn't he? Romance never is for me. I haven't found the right guy yet. I couldn't quit lying to his face. At the same time, though, I couldn't be that vulnerable. Not yet, even with him. Now you're lumping me in with other guys? Hurt strangled his voice. I almost reached out to him, to reassure him that we would always be together, even if I didn't choose the path he obviously wanted. I nodded, but said no. Even my body didn't want me to treat him or the situation the way I was. My body longed to be in his arms. My heart longed to be with him. My spirit sought him. But everything I was afraid of screamed at me to run. Lifting my head, I smiled. You can leave. They always do. It was like I challenged him. Challenged him to leave. Challenged him to be what I knew he was dying to be. What every man was meant to be. I always pushed the men away, took their choice away so that it was in my control and not theirs. That way, no one had the opportunity to hurt me. Hardening myself against the pain I saw in Dylan's eyes was easier. If I didn't inspect too closely the fact that I'd caused it with a callousness I wasn't usually predisposed to. He stepped nearer to me, his throat working as he tried to speak. His voice fell into a whisper, and it was like there were no cars in the street, no waves rushing in, and no breeze blowing the coconut tree fronds above us. It was just us in that space and in that time. I'm tired of trying to convince you I'm not the other guys. I'm not your dad. I didn't ask you to convince me of anything. It was the first fight we'd ever been in, the first real fight I had feared for so long. I would blame it on the romance aspect. That was it. Until we'd introduced the romance, we were perfect. And now, I pasted a smile to my face. It's okay. I know better than to believe in forever. Fights ruin everything. You think we won't work because of a fight? This isn't even a real fight. He reached out with both hands as if he was going to pull me into his arms to console me. Taking the opportunity to thrust the box back into his hands, I sidestepped from his grasp, smirking as if I couldn't be bothered anymore. We'd gone too far for my comfort level. Without the opportunity to make my decision and stand by it, I was being shoved into the norm for my decisions. Flee. Yep, it's the beginning of the end. Upset wasn't the word I would use for how I felt, but I wouldn't let him come closer. I had prepared myself for this. I could handle it. I had to. But Dylan? This would destroy him. But he'd promised we could go back to normal. I had to hold on to that. I had let the illusion go too far with him. It was all my fault, and I was willing to accept responsibility for it. But I needed to be able to have the default in place. That would be my saving grace. He bit his lip, the shadow of his stubble enhancing the angles of his face and the dark, tortured pain in his eyes. Then, before I could react, he reached out and took his hand in mine, slapping the box into my palm. I closed my fingers around the soft angles. Just go. The words were wrenched from my mouth, and I wanted him to leave. I begged him to leave with my eyes. My body hated me as I refused to cry. I wouldn't cry. And just like the man I knew him to be, Dylan did what I wanted. What he wanted. He turned and walked away. Chapter 20. Dylan, Hukalau Lanai wasn't far enough from the hotel for what I needed. Going straight to the hotel wasn't an option at that point in time. I walked and walked and walked, circling other restaurants, skirting the coconut marketplace, finding myself at the beach by our hotel. I sat on the still warm sand and watched the moonlight caress the waves. We had less than 48 hours together, and we were wasting them fighting. Fighting. Which we never did. It was new territory for me, and it made me sick. I could accept responsibility for it, but I was tired of waiting for her to see what we could be. How could I see things so clearly, and she could turn a blind eye as if nothing had happened between us? The sand lulled me to stay a little longer. I tried to give Kayla enough time to get into bed or do whatever she needed to do. Faced with new territory in our relationship, I wasn't sure what the best actions to take would be. When she left, I would have one more week left on the island. If she decided to stay with me, despite our fight, I was going to ask her to stay with me. Extend her vacation by a week, and we could actually get married there on the island. We made solid money back home. We could afford a nice Hawaiian wedding on the beach with just us, the sand, and the officiator. If she said no. I didn't want to think that way, though. I wanted things to work out. I wanted to ask her to really marry me. That's what I've always wanted. As I sat there and contemplated the time we were wasting fighting, it hit me that I was wasting even more sitting there thinking about. I stood and brushed the sand from my pants. I would fix things because I loved her. I needed her to see she loved me. I made my way back to our room, picking up my pace as I got closer. A dread drilled around inside me as I walked past our dark patio. All the lights were off in our rooms. Was she already in bed? I rounded the lobby and walked down the hallway to our room, using the key to get inside. Flipping on the light by the bathroom so I could see, I caught my breath. Something was off. It wasn't that she wasn't in the bed or wasn't in the bathroom. She had completely removed herself from the hotel room. Her bags were gone, her toiletries were gone, and all of her clothes were gone. She had even made the bed as if she'd never been there, as if we'd never cuddled in each other's arms. I turned on the bathroom light in case she was hiding in there to surprise me like a joke or something. The wedding ring box sat on the counter with a note stuck to the bathroom mirror above it, grabbing my attention. The box hadn't been opened. I want to go back to the way things were. Love ya. Kay. Wait. She couldn't have left too long ago. I rushed down to the counter, slapping my hand on the surface in front of the woman's face. She lifted alarmed eyes to mine. Can I help you, sir? I took a steadying breath. The woman who was with me, Kayla Britton, did she get another room? She left something in mine. I dug my fingers into my palms and broke out in a sweat. Please. Say she was still there. Please. No, sir. Kayla Britton left for the airport. She had me call her a cab about 30 minutes ago. She smiled empathetically. She might understand, but I doubted it. I nodded tightly, patting the counter and turning. Thank you. Was that my voice? The choking sound at the end was at odds with how I normally sounded. Back in my, not our, room, I stood in the small foyer and stared at the shell of a suite. My heart broke. The door closed behind me with a soft click, and I fell to my knees in the half-darkened room. I wasn't going back to the way things were. I had to stop fighting for her and give her what she wanted. I hung my head and tried to fight the sobs of despair that wanted to rip themselves from me. I would have to call my lawyer in the morning and get things moving, something I desperately didn't want to do. Chapter 21. Kayla. I had changed my flight and left the island as soon as I could. On the red-eye flight back home toward the cold and Dylan-less northwest, I stared out the window. The inky black of night taunted me. I had to agree. Could I be honest with myself? The man next to me snored and jolted himself awake, looking at me like I'd rudely disturbed his sleep. He twisted, turning his face away from me, and went back to his open-mouthed rest. As the distance widened between Dylan and I, my heart ached to return to where I really belonged. Not in Idaho. Not alone. I should have stayed with him. I should have tried to figure it out. And if I was really honest, like brutally honest, was I brave enough to admit to myself that I was the one who ran from intimacy and not the men? The only man who'd ever left me was my father. I was the one who pushed. I was the one who ran. I never pulled them into my life because I didn't want them closer to me. I didn't want to be vulnerable. The only man who'd ever gotten close to me like that, who I had let in, was the only man that I really loved. Dylan. Or I guessed it was Sheldon Dylan Drake. When I got home, I searched for the itinerary he'd emailed me. I'd never known he was going to Hawaii because he hadn't sent that part. He'd only sent me when he was leaving and coming home. He was supposed to be back in a week. Could I wait that long? I waited through the rest of Friday evening and all of Saturday, as if maybe he would text me first. Why did I expect him to make all the effort? He'd done more than his share, and I was bursting with revelations on the inner workings of my heart and soul. I had to share with someone, and the only one I wanted to share with was Dylan. Again, all of my answers came back to him. How had I missed how fundamental he was to me? Not just on the friend level, but in everything. When I compared all men to him, that should have been enough of a clue. Sitting in my living room with the television on some Hallmark movie, I gave in to my heart and picked up the cell. What would be good to send him without being pushy? I didn't want to apologize via text. That was as corny as it came, and he deserved better. I can't wait to see you. We have a lot to talk about. That should work. It wasn't too platonic or too mushy. I wanted him to know how I felt, but I didn't want to divulge everything on the phone. A few hours passed, and I have to admit, I worried it didn't go through. Washing laundry in the kitchen, I checked my phone every few minutes. After night had fallen, I tried again. Hey, what you doing? Did you want me to check on your plants? He didn't have plants inside his house, but I didn't know what to say. I hit send before I could analyze the text like it was an ad going to the press. Plants? I closed my eyes and tried not to see the stupid text I'd sent. At least, I hadn't debated signing love, you, or anything else, and left it as it was. I couldn't sleep, checking to make sure my phone had a full battery and that it wasn't broken. I even called customer service and had them check to make sure I could receive text messages. My phone was fine. Dylan hadn't replied. What if he'd met someone already? It wasn't like the opportunities weren't always there for him. Women flocked to him like piranhas on fresh blood when I was around. I couldn't imagine what it was like for him when he appeared to be an available man. Yikes. In Hawaii, it was the capital of romance, and he was ripe for a rebound. Horror at just how monumental my mistake was shredded my nerves. I needed to get out of my house and head back to Hawaii. What if he wasn't there? What if he... No, wait. I needed to breathe. I could give him some time to think things through. He deserved that. If he was with someone else, that was okay too. I could cope. I could figure it out. He needed more time than just a couple hours to reply. I sat around Sunday waiting for a text from him, but I never got one. While Big Dog Amusement Park was closed for the next week or two, I still had access to the office, and I'd originally planned on checking in on the training that was going on. We would open in less than 2 weeks, and I wanted to make sure everyone was ready. Chewing on my inner cheek wouldn't be good for anyone. I tried to drink more water, but every time I got up to fill the water cup or use the restroom, my chair scraped against the back of my calf where the scabs of the sting were. I hunkered over the staff sheets and tapped my pencil on the paper. Why hadn't he called or texted? Maybe he was coming home early. If I hadn't heard from him by that evening, I'd call the condos and ask to talk to him. Maybe he'd dropped his phone in the ocean or something. The desk phone rang beside me, and I jumped. Hoping it was Dylan, I picked up on the first ring. Big Dog Amusement Park. This is Kayla. Lovely. My voice was all breathy like I was working for some kind of a phone escort service. Kayla, this is Don Watts. Don was our lawyer, both with the company and for us personally. He was a good friend of our families, and he always watched out for Dylan and me. I'd been waiting for final waivers and contracts to come in for the new season, and I was glad to get those in before Dylan returned. He hated dealing with the legal aspects. I shoved my disappointment that it wasn't Dylan to the side. Don, it's so nice to hear from you. Do you need me to come down and pick those contracts up? I stood from the desk, holding the receiver in my shoulder while I grabbed the car keys from the hook by the door. Oh, that makes this a lot easier since you know about them. Yes, the sooner the better. Of course I knew about them. Was he crazy? I had drafted the initial idea, and I was the one who'd rejected the first 2 versions. With how terribly demanding I'd been, I wasn't surprised he was blocking the entire thing from his memory. I'll see you soon. I hung up the cordless. Dylan would have a laugh at that one. We were always saying Don was going to be older than dirt one of these days. Clouds rolled across the dark blue sky. We were scheduled to have rain the rest of that day, and then beautiful skies, and to our normal temperatures in the 50s and 60s for May. The meteorologist even promised 70s and 80s the following week. But they were all liars, so I didn't get my hopes up. When I pulled into Don's offices, not more than 30 minutes later, I checked my phone again. I spun the keys around my finger as I climbed from the car and made my way into his office. Smiling at the receptionist, I strode toward the conference room she pointed me toward. Centered in the large meeting room, a long, low table was surrounded by 10 chairs. Don manned one with a high back opposite the door. In front of him on the table, he'd stacked 5 piles of paper. He was scanning one when I came in. Wow, that's a lot. You know Dylan's not here, though, right? He's on vacation for a few more days. Is it okay if I sign them as a representative of Big Dog, or does he need to be here too? I claimed a seat across from Don and smiled at his red forehead. You've been out in the sun, Don. A brighter pink encapsulated his face, and he handed me a pen. His double chin quivered, but he spoke with authority and firm understanding. I know Dylan is gone. That's why you're here. Dylan would like to sell his share of the company to you. His terms are very generous, but they're all laid out here. As a joint lawyer, I don't want to come across as saying anything that is self-serving, but I would recommend taking the deal. It's extremely generous. I slouched forward, bracing my forearms on the table. I felt like I'd been kicked in the stomach with steel-toed boots. This is some kind of joke, right? I glanced at the date on the first set of contracts. Sheldon Dylan Drake had signed the papers 4 days before we'd left for our trip. 4 days before. Don shook his head sadly, avoiding my gaze. Everything fell into place. Hawaii was an attempt to get me to see him for what he was, in love with me. I failed the test and he was leaving me. I wasn't surprised because I always manipulated men into doing just that. Why would I be shocked that Dylan fell into that same group? He was different, but he had feelings. I'd been stringing them along for so long, I'd just assumed he wasn't as attached to me as I was to him. My hands shook as I picked at the corner of the closest contract. I blinked back my tears and breathed in deep. Was this a contingency plan? He called you from Hawaii and set it into motion, right? At Don's silence, I lowered my head. What had I done? I knew I'd hurt him, but how irrevocably hadn't occurred to me. Don was waiting, and I just had to pick my head up and sign them without losing my control. That wasn't going to happen. I sat up, wiping my damp cheeks. Would you mind if I took them home to look them over? I didn't wait for his answer, as I stacked up the file piles and held them tightly in my arms. I didn't look at Don, or even wait for anything as I darted from the room. He'd have to be okay with it. I wasn't taking them back. What if I burned them? Would that force Dylan to return to me? Would that make him face me? Would I be able to face myself? I drove as if in a fog, pulling up to my driveway and parking the car. Leaning forward, I rolled my head from side to side on the steering wheel, fighting back tears I'd already lost the battle to. Why would you do this, Dylan? Why would you leave me now? I rolled my head so I looked towards Dylan's house. A sign in his front yard made me sit up straight. I dashed at the river of tears coursing down my face and jumped from my car. I ran as fast as I could down to the sign and stared. The logo on the sign was some realtor's office from downtown. Dylan had listed his house. He wouldn't answer my texts, but he would list his house for sale. He was declaring to me he was never coming back. What a lousy way to tell me. I should have texted him. I was sorry. Doubt rippled through me at the ways I'd texted him. I ran up to the door, a realtor's lockbox already in place. Peering through the windows, I covered my mouth in horror. It was empty. He'd had it emptied while I was gone? When had that happened? When was I gone long enough for them to empty his house? But the last 2 days I'd been in the backyard of my own house, staring at the phone, waiting for a text that was never coming. How long was he going to punish me? I slumped onto the front porch, reaching into my pocket for my phone. I still hadn't gotten a text. Fine. I was going to bombard him with texts, jar him, see if I could make him answer. My fingers worked furiously as I oscillated between anger, sadness, longing, and despair. What's going on? You're selling me the company? But that wasn't enough. Why is your house for sale? I had to know, and the text messages limited me in so many ways. Why aren't you texting me back? Call me, or text, or something. This isn't how we treat each other, Dylan. And one last one to get my point across. Please. Anchored to the steps for another 30 minutes, I couldn't leave. I had to hear back from him. I didn't want to lose the connection his house gave me to him, but it slowly sank in that he wasn't at that house anymore. He'd abandoned it. Just like he'd abandoned me. I was losing him, almost irreversibly. The worst thing that could possibly happen, the thing that I was scared of the most, was happening, and it was outside of my control. Running to my house, I screamed when the door slammed behind me. I couldn't lose him. The next few days passed in a fog, and I could have sworn the flu came back. Every time I thought of him being out of my life, I threw up. Every time. I had driven him away. I needed him back. I loved him. The truth dawned on me. I pushed him away and destroyed everything between us. That fact was driven home, and I could see myself for what I was. I had been happy the last 16 years, with things steady and concrete between him and me, because he'd never gone anywhere. I knew the women weren't a challenge, because I knew he loved me. I thought he knew that I needed him as much, but that was all I was willing to give. He'd called my bluff. He was making me choose. Didn't he know that I couldn't breathe without him? I was scared to even try before. I wasn't willing to go a day without him. I had to fix it. I had to risk everything. Because even if we wouldn't work as a married couple, I refused to give up our friendship. Friendship aside, I loved him, and if we got married, it would be forever. Chapter 22. Dylan. Traveling Europe wasn't such a bad idea, with my house empty of things to live in and the business no longer a problem. My parents were traveling, and so they had offered me their house to stay in. My mom was apologetic when she heard what had happened. She knew, or had assumed, that Kayla and I would always be together. Hadn't we all? All of my things had been packed up and moved into a storage unit. If I did decide to travel, I wouldn't go anywhere tropical. The last week in Hawaii had been torture, and I couldn't put myself through that again. Even the curve of the palm trees had reminded me of her. I caught a taxi to my parents' house. The residence was far enough away from my neighborhood, and Kayla, it shouldn't hurt too bad to be there. When the yellow cab dropped me off, I made a point not to look at her mother's house, which was still next door to my parents'. Maybe coming there hadn't been the brightest move I'd ever made. Images of Kayla bouncing the basketball to me flashed in my mind as I stared at the driveway. The backyard would be worse since she and I had played back there more than anywhere else. I had done my best to make the cut clean and to eradicate her from my life, but I had already failed. It was like telling your body you didn't need your lungs. It was an impossibility when I wasn't sure I would survive without her. The morning after she left, I woke up and called the lawyer, turned around, and blocked her number from my cell. I didn't want to be tempted to go to her or push her into agreeing to something she obviously didn't want. Plus, she would most likely text me like we were friends. Just friends. I didn't want to deal with that with my heart so raw from her rejection. I went inside my parents' front door and sluggishly tossed my bags to the side. I didn't want to be there. I honestly didn't want to be anywhere. There was nowhere in my life that Kayla hadn't permeated. The house smelled fresh, like they were still on a trip for 3 weeks. I think they had left on a cruise, but I wasn't sure. Mom and Dad traveled all the time. My childhood home was decorated with a classic style that was still moderately child-proof. My mom constantly nudged me for grandkids. I'd threatened her with a Newfoundland puppy for a grandson. She'd backed off after that. I slid my shoes off and stretched. At the bottom of the stairs, I turned, catching the out-of-place color from the corner of my eye. A bright yellow Post-it note had been stuck on the mirror in the front hall. Come to the patio. I recognized the loopy handwriting, and my heart skipped a beat. I didn't want to just make up as friends. I thought I had made that clear to Kayla. I had promised her normalcy if things didn't work out, but I wasn't going to survive normal. Not again. No matter how much I tried pep-talking myself, a fine sheen of sweat collected between my shoulder blades, and my heart skipped a beat as I went to the back door. I wanted to see her. I had to see her, even if it was for one last time. I slid open the back door and my jaw dropped. She had set up my parents' back deck to look like her first night in Hawaii. The table with a white cloth, the dinner we weren't allowed to eat because she got the flu. White Christmas lights had been strung up along the arbor and could have passed for the night sky over the ocean. Soft sounds of the ocean played from a small stereo hid on the side of the deck. Real potted palm trees lined the deck in random spots, and a collection of leis had been strung up by the table. The scent of hibiscus was strong. Kayla stepped from the shadows in a white and blue dress, and her hair decorated with flowers. She raised her eyes to mine, visibly shaking as she held out a long jeweler's box. I love you. I always want to be with you. I'm so sorry for what happened in Hawaii. I'm starting to realize I'm not a good person. I stepped out of the doorway completely. You're the best kind of person. I watched her, slowly closing the slider behind me. The setting was more than I could have expected, and it was confusing me. She said she loved me, but she always said that. Did she mean be with me as a friend or as man and wife like I wanted? Why now? Had she changed her mind because she thought it was the only way to keep me in her life? Like she would sacrifice herself for my friendship? Flattered wasn't what I was feeling, if that was the truth. I didn't know what it meant to lose you. She looked at me with dark circles under her eyes. Had she lost sleep, worried about her and me? Losing me would hurt her, and I knew that. But I still couldn't stop myself from trying to cut my losses. I don't want that. I shook my head, frustrated that I had to say again to her what my expectations were. Didn't she get it yet? My hopes crashed again, and I mentally rebuked myself for my stupidity. I don't want desperate love. I sighed, turning back to the door. Not a desperate love or a pity love or even a friend's love. She stepped forward, holding out the box and opening the top. An elaborately made wooden watch rested inside. There were no hands, and a selfie we had taken at one of the beaches had been etched into the wood. How about a forever love? Disbelief rattled through me. Would I be able to hold things together? I'd been on an emotional roller coaster the last week, and the reception from Kayla was unbelievably hoped for, but never expected or even believed possible. I pulled the ring from my pocket and held out the box one more time. This would be the test. The final test. I couldn't handle any more rejection. If you're serious, marry me for real, not the online one. For real. I should have asked you a long time ago. I don't believe in divorce. If we get married, it's forever. She warned me, lowering the watch a couple centimeters but holding her gaze steady as she held me in her regard. Are you sure? I had to know that it was a definite yes. A forever yes, like she'd promised. Tears brightened her eyes and she nodded, helping me slip the ring on her finger. Yes, I've never been surer. She blinked at the hibiscus flower on her finger. She looked up at me, her eyes wide. It's perfect. At least we can say we already had our honeymoon. I laughed when she giggled, and we fell into each other's arms. I was never going to let her go. No matter how much she pushed, this was forever. Chapter 23. Kayla. We only had 2 months left of the summer season, and our grand opening of the Paradise zipline ride would start any second. Tourist numbers were up, and we'd surpassed our goals by almost twofold. The renovations couldn't have been smarter. I stood on the last platform of the 3 lines, having offered the first ride to Dylan. He didn't know yet why I was being careful. 3 months since our honeymoon, and our real wedding was scheduled in 2 weeks. Our parents were so excited for us. We were going back to Hawaii for just a few days. Our parents were meeting us there, and then we were coming back. We had to finish what we started on that island. Tom, the ride specialist, lifted his hand to shade his eyes. His radio hissed and beeped, announcing the first rider was on his way. Each line was only 45 seconds to a minute long, and I counted in my head the moment when I knew he would see my announcement. There was a billboard that was set up halfway between the 2 ends of the second zip line. Instead of an advertisement for one of our vendors like we usually had, I had reserved the space for just that day. On the board, I announced we were pregnant with twins and a shot of the ultrasound. He came into view, his smile huge as he swung onto the platform. Dylan landed in the final spot only 10 feet from me. The brightness of his eyes and excitement on his face weren't for the ride. He had seen my sign. As soon as the harness had been detached from the zip line, he rushed me, swinging me around in a circle and squeezing me tight. Are you happy? I took his face in my hands and stared into his eyes. I didn't know I could be this happy. We kissed, not for the first time and not for the last. All my life, my other half had been right there, right in front of me. I didn't know what I was missing. Never again. And he would never leave me. He'd put me back together and made me whole. Epilogue. Colin Davies. The afternoon light faded into early evening. Colin couldn't leave the floor of her closet. The rough texture of the carpet dug into the soft skin of her calves. She ignored everything, tried to shut off her sensations. Too much sensation could overwhelm you. Wasn't that what caused heart attacks? She hadn't been able to put the paper down. How had she found it? Oh, that's right. She'd been rifling through her desk drawer, and a newspaper article she thought she'd gotten rid of found its way into her grasp. She pulled it out, half distracted with her defenses down, and stared at the smudged writing on the faded paper. Man dies in car crash. She didn't read the rest of the article. She didn't need to. The accident wasn't something she had to hear about from someone else. Colin had been there. She'd seen it. She was quoted in some of the articles. The shock of finding the article numbed her mind. She'd stumbled out of the office, and somehow she'd made it back to her house to collapse in the safety of her closet. As soon as she had enough energy, she would reach forward, and she would grab the finely crafted wooden box she had shoved under her shoe rack. It wasn't any bigger than a shoebox itself. After a moment, Colin reached forward, pulling the cedar box into her lap. She never locked it. If she locked it, she'd be saying a final goodbye, and she couldn't do that. She wasn't ready. Colin would never be ready for goodbye. She lifted the lid, closing her eyes and breathing in the essence of his cologne and a cut of his hair she'd saved. The smells she swore she'd never forget. Each time she was forced to open the box was new and heartbreakingly painful. A stack of pictures greeted her when she finally opened her eyes. Did she have the strength to look through them and rediscover the memories that she worked so hard to bury? Colin had forgotten any kind of happiness. She'd forgotten what it meant to roll over and see the one she loved sleeping beside her. She forgot what it was like to care about someone else's opinion, or to rely on someone else to help her decide what she was going to do for the evening. She reached in the box to pull out the stack of papers, unable to resist the pull. Before she could withdraw the pictures to study for torturous hours on end, her phone buzzed in her pocket, half breaking the spell that held her in check. Wiping away the tears she hadn't known she'd been crying, she swiped the screen. A text from Carlisle brought her back to the present, and she pushed the box away. She had to extract herself from the past and shove herself back into the present. Her present of loneliness and longing that was still filled with unexpected happiness as she matched others for a happy ever after. The honeymoon couple was successful. Carlisle didn't know that Colin had plans for him next. It was time to put those plans into motion. Everyone deserved happiness. Everyone deserved love. Carlisle's story is next, and you don't want to miss it. Keyword: I Do, Book 5 of the clickandwed.com series. Keep reading for a sneak peek. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. Do you love sweet, clean romance and want to read more terrific romances by Bonnie Paulson? Psst, you can even get a free sweet romance when you sign up. Keyword: I do. Opposites attract but clash first. He's a people person who's been burned. She's a people hater with a heart of code. Together they can make or break each other's dreams. Shandy designed Click and Wed for the owner, excited to help others without having to talk to anyone or leave her house. She's not a fan of people in real life and much prefers online interaction to anything else. When the website owner contacts her for a specific job, Shandy has to leave her comfort zone, and she's not sure she can. Carlisle has had his heart broken, filed for bankruptcy, lost his home, and been shunned by his family because of a short stint in prison. The Click and Wed owner gave him a second chance, and now she needs help with a special project. He has to work with the closet witch. Shandy is mean and blunt, but Carlisle can't help being drawn to her. They sign up on the app to test the program and then get matched. Shandy stands by her program's matching capabilities, and Carlisle can't fight his attraction. Can they survive 6 months, or will they prove to be the exception to the app's success? Grab this poignant read, where two hearts find love in the most unlikely of places. Keyword: I do sneak peek. Chapter 1. Shandy. I could do it. Why did I have to give myself a pep talk every time I needed to leave the house? At that point, it was only once a month, but still. 12 pep talks a year? I couldn't do anything without one. Leaving the house shouldn't be hard for a grown woman, a woman who could pay her own bills and have her own job. I could do this. Come on, Shandy. You can do this. Usually, I scheduled the days I would leave the house well in advance, so I would be prepared to leave. But this time, my appointment was scheduled on a day Colin couldn't meet me. There were no stalkers or killers after me. I wasn't that exciting. I had no idea where my paranoia came from. I lived in Sandpoint, Idaho, for crying out loud. I think the last time someone died of unnatural causes, the death made national news. I couldn't remember the details, but the death wasn't from foul play, or so they presumed. I wasn't saying something did happen. I'm just saying no one knows for absolutely certain that there was nothing else involved. What was I afraid could happen? I wasn't sure. There were too many possibilities. If I looked at it from a rational perspective, I know my odds of getting mugged were lower than my chances of running into Viggo Mortensen at the bakery. But my logical side and my emotional side didn't usually get along. People triggered a panic attack. It was plain and simple. Back to the needed pep talk. Okay, I could do this. I stood at my front door, my laptop bag slung across my shoulder with my hands gripping the strap, as if it was my lifeline. Honestly, it might be. I did not want to leave the house. I went through this every time. Why hadn't my Xanax kicked in yet? Maybe I better ask my home visiting therapist for a stronger prescription. I reached up and pressed on my eyes with my free hand. I could do this. I had to get to the office. I was expected at my job. All month I worked from home, but once a month I was expected to go in for a meeting with the company owner, Colin Davies. She didn't mind visiting me here, but usually we had things to talk about at her office that she couldn't cart over to me. She saved everything for our monthly meetings. Finally, what could have been 2 hours after I took the stupid pill, but was more like 20 minutes, the edge of anxiety receded. I took a deep breath and reached for the doorknob. I could do this. Walking to my car and climbing in wasn't the hard part. It was leaving behind the safety and silence of my home. I got to the Click and Wed office building, where it lorded over the northern corner of 3rd Avenue, above the Panhandle Coffee and Cones. I'd never been inside the small ice cream parlor. The car was easy to maneuver into a parking spot. I turned off the engine and gave myself another pep talk. I was 20 minutes early. I always had to leave about an hour before, so I had time to talk myself into going. Driving to the office took only 3 minutes from my house. I took a deep breath and grabbed my laptop, but I stayed in my seat and counted to 31. What an odd number, but it was my favorite prime number. 13 backwards. 30. 31. I jumped from the car, slamming the locked door and running up the office stairs as fast as I could. I avoided contact with anyone who might be on the stairwell or in the hallway. I didn't want to talk to anyone I might see on the street. People. I like to pretend I was allergic to them in clumps, like pollen in the spring. I stopped at the top of the stairs and tried to focus on the fact that I had taken a Xanax, and I should still be calm. It shouldn't have worn off this soon. 20 minutes. An hour. It didn't matter. I'd pop another in the meeting, if it went over a couple hours. Taking another deep breath, I exhaled through my lips. If I continued at this rate, I would soon pass out. The whole Click and Wed office made up 3 large rooms, which included a reception area, a conference room, and Colin's office. I pulled open the main door and walked through, allowing the panel to shut behind me. I stopped, backing up to press my shoulder blades against the hardwood of the door. Why did they have to keep redecorating? What was wrong with leaving the furniture and decorations the same between each month? It's not like there's anything wrong with how they had it before, or the time before that, or even before that. The change of environment threw me off, and I could feel my heart rate speeding up. I took stock of what was familiar as I counted softly in my head. Red curtains, 1. Black and white checkered rugs, 2. A large banner of the company logo on the wall, 3. Carlisle, 4. I narrowed my eyes when I inventoried his broad shoulders. He stood at the contemporary architecture desk, leaning over paperwork I couldn't identify from across the room. His dark hair fell across his forehead when he glanced over his shoulder and squinted at me. Shandy Watson. Is it that time of the month already? He looked down, missing my glare. I wanted to talk to him about as much as I wanted to be outside of my house. Every time he spoke, I swear he used double meanings. Ignoring him, I didn't say anything and pretended the other office assistant wasn't there as I walked past her. It wasn't fair Carlisle was friendly and good-looking. He rounded the corner and came toward me. I slid to the side, trying to avoid any contact with him. He held out a cup of coffee, steam rising from the caramel-colored liquid. You had sugar and cream last time. I hope that is still how you like it. His eyes. Dang it. I didn't like being taken unaware, and with my defenses down and partially drugged, I was vulnerable. Not my favorite way to talk to men, or women, or rocks. My gaze flicked from his entrancing smile to the cup and back at him. I couldn't take the drink from him. There was no way. I couldn't lift my hand on my own, not toward him. My throat started to close as panic welled inside me. Carlyle reached down and lifted my empty hand. He pressed the cup into my curved fingers and arched his eyebrows. Normal people say thank you. His gentle reproach stung, eliciting shame that didn't mix well with my anxiety. I mumbled something that may or may not have been thank you and pushed through to Colin's office. At least that room hadn't changed. Would I ever be able to control my breathing? I clutched at the base of my throat, my chest rapidly rising and dropping. If I didn't calm down, I would spill coffee all over the place. My defenses were up, and my instinct to hide was overwhelming. Unfortunately, Colin didn't have any blanket forts in her office. Colin swiveled in her seat from the window overlooking the large lake scene. She smiled when she saw me. "Shandy, I'm so glad you could make it. I'm sorry for the last-minute change in plans. Thank you for accommodating me. I know how hard this must be for you. Tomorrow, I just—" She shook her head gracefully as she motioned for me to claim the seat across from her. Had the anniversary come up again so soon? I'd only been concerned with my own problems and forgot to consider what could possibly force Colin to change anything she'd planned. Colin continued. "Come on in. I'm excited to do this. I've wanted to get on this project for a while now, as you know." I hated going to the office, but once I settled in and focused on my job, secure in Colin's office with just her and I actually didn't mind being there. Colin had a strict rule that we weren't to be interrupted, under any circumstance, and that helped a lot with my anxiety. Not one to leap to lying, as much as Carlyle bugged me with his easygoing nature and obvious social prowess. He was the only person besides Colin who wasn't turned away by my antisocial behavior. Honestly, he wasn't bad on the eyes either. Seeing him every once in a while was definitely a plus. Too bad I had to be drugged and tense every time I saw him. "We need to go over the bulk of the website. I would like to see it have more power. I've already purchased more server space for that. I would also like to upload a lot of these testimonials that the previous couples have been sending me. Can we add an option for the international sites to click in as well? I think spreading availability to the UK as well as Canada and Australia will be a good place to start on this particular project." Colin jumped in. She hated wasted time on chit-chat as much as I did. One of many reasons I respected her like I did. "It's going good so far. Have there been any complaints? I haven't noticed any matches that have been declined. Is that something we're concerned about? The statistics show that as more people are matched and are willing or able to make the investment, they are actually willing to try it." The whole concept was one I loved more than coding. I couldn't believe mail order brides was an old concept that Colin had made new again. She'd given it a contemporary twist so many people could use. I know I was one of them. Unfortunately, I was too close to the project. It probably wasn't ethical that I try it. Plus, no one wanted to be with someone who literally couldn't leave the house. Colin tapped the top of her desk with the end of a pencil and leaned back, crossing her legs. She considered me with narrowed eyes. "Are you interested in getting married, Shandy?" I laughed, uncomfortable with the question. "Of course. Who isn't interested in being in love? But as you know, I can't leave the house. And let's be honest, it's not like I'm going to marry my neighbor. He's 92. I don't care how many times he hits on me when I take my garbage out. I'm not marrying the guy." I said it jokingly, but taking out my garbage took a lot of nerve, and he seemed to watch me. Because every time I did it, there he was with some kind of a sick pickup line. I usually waved my hand and ducked back inside. "All right, I can understand why you won't date, at least around here. Have you considered trying the app? Before lowering the price, I need to make sure everything is going to work okay. For instance, I need to make sure I can even match an agoraphobic computer programmer. Can your program do that?" She winked at me, but her challenge was clear. "Could my program match the most difficult of clients?" I took a moment to consider her. I didn't want to get matched, at least to the extent that I was doing it to prove a point about my work. I didn't want to get married and see just how much rejection I could get. I'd been down that road before. Every time I tried online dating programs, I was stuck at my house while they were trying to meet with me in town. My interest was low on dealing with rejection anymore. The online dating sites had never worked, which was why I had agreed to help with an online marriage site. Rejection aside, one thing I did know and had complete confidence in was that my program's execution and performance was flawless. I lifted my chin and smiled. My program will match anyone who signs up, if they have a match signed up, on the computer. If they don't have a match, the site isn't going to conjure one up for them. You can't say that there's going to be someone for me to be matched to who is just waiting on the database, or even that someone is going to come on with the year. That's a guarantee you can't make, and one I wouldn't be foolish enough to back up. She didn't seem perturbed by my talk about expectations or what was logical for her to expect. Colin swung back and forth as she watched me, her lazy movement deceptively calm. Nothing Colin did was meaningless or without a purpose. Her silence scared me. What did she have brewing in that head of hers? After a long moment of thinking, she stopped moving and leaned over the legal pad in front of her. So what? You won't try? You're going to lock yourself away in that house of yours and just not try? You can't give up on yourself, Shandy. You deserve better than that. Luckily, Colin was my friend as well as my boss. I took work from her on a contractual basis, but she paid me a base salary that went up when she needed an intensive job done. I pretty much came up with things to do, and she paid me every month. The arrangement allowed me to stay home and not have to go outside and deal with other people. I cleared my throat. Colin waved her hands and cut me off. Your marital status isn't my problem. My concern I want dealt with is site accuracy. If it's high enough, I can go international. That's what I want. I need that to be a for sure thing. I'll deal with the hassles and legalities of going across borders, but what I need to know is if it can cross cultural boundaries and phobias as well. Do you see what I'm asking you for? I met Colin's gaze. Was I sure my program could do what she wanted? Design I could do. What I needed was solid parameters Colin used as matching guidelines. She had to give me the updated ones, so I could improve the algorithms that would decide if the matches were good or not. From what I'd seen so far, based on the performance of the program, Colin had nothing but success behind her and her secret parameters. I had no idea how she came up with them, but their simplicity astounded me. So far, her compatibility scores were good, but I needed them to be higher before they were something I'd consider to take on myself. If we could get the scores to 96% higher or more, I would consider signing up myself. Colin smiled and finished spinning on her seat. I'm going to hold you to that. Keep listening.